The card was cream, thick enough to feel expensive, with my name printed in gold above 4 words that made no sense. Past family, table 19. I read it twice, then looked at Tessa. I think this one got mixed up. She took the card from my hand and held it beneath the light from the chandelier. She was still wearing her wedding gown, one hand gathering the skirt so nobody stepped on it. There were tiny pearls sewn along her sleeves. I knew because I had replaced 3 of them myself 2 nights earlier. No, that's yours. Her voice was clear and carrying. Marion Hale. Past family, table 19. Several people near the seating display stopped pretending not to listen. Past family, I repeated. It's just the category. Tessa smiled as if I had asked where the restrooms were. Former spouses, previous family connections, people from earlier chapters. I looked past her at Daniel. My son had heard. He was less than 6 feet away, still in his tuxedo, holding 2 champagne glasses. For 1 second, neither of us moved. I gave him the chance a mother gives, even when she already knows what the answer will cost her. He lowered his voice. Mom, please, it's just a seating label. Don't make today harder. The string quartet in the next room began playing something soft and lovely. I remember thinking that somebody had paid them a great deal of money to make sure no silence lasted long enough to become honest. An hour earlier, I had stood in the front row at St. Andrew's and watched Daniel marry Tessa Vaughn beneath an arch of white roses and eucalyptus. Peter, Daniel's father, had been seated directly across the aisle from me with his second wife, Adrienne. Peter had winked at me before the ceremony, not because we were friendly. Peter winked whenever he didn't know what else to do. He once winked at a tow truck driver who was hauling away his car. Adrienne had touched 2 fingers to her lips and mouthed, "Beautiful," when Tessa appeared at the back of the church. I had nodded because she was right. Tessa was beautiful. She was 32, tall and composed, and she had the kind of posture that made every room look slightly disorganized around her. Daniel cried when he saw her. That part had gotten me. He had always fought tears like they were debt collectors. At 35, he still cleared his throat when emotion came near him, as if love were a piece of popcorn he could cough loose. I had watched his face during the vows instead of watching Tessa's. Maybe that was my first mistake of the day, or my 1000th. Mothers count differently. After the ceremony, while the photographer arranged everyone on the church steps, Tessa had reached behind herself and caught my wrist. "My bustle," she whispered. One of the loops had slipped from its button. I crouched behind her in my blue silk dress, found the loop, and fixed it while the photographer called for Peter and Adrienne to move closer to Daniel. "Groom's family, nice and tight," he said. I was still kneeling in a cloud of white satin. Tessa glanced over her shoulder. "Did you get it?" "Almost." The photographer lowered his camera. "Ma'am, can you step out for just 1 second?" I did. I even smoothed the back of Tessa's gown before I moved. Peter put an arm around Daniel. Adrienne leaned in beside Tessa. The 4 of them made a handsome square against the stone church doors. I stood near a planter with Tessa's bouquet in one hand and my purse in the other. Then Daniel spotted me. "Wait," he said. "We need Mom." I started forward. Tessa murmured something to the photographer. He nodded and took another picture of the 4 of them before waving me in. At the time, I told myself it was about symmetry. You can explain away almost anything if you start early enough. Now, in the hotel ballroom foyer, I looked again at the cream card in Tessa's hand. "Where is table 19? "Inside, toward the back." She pointed through the open doors, near the windows. There were no windows in the ballroom. I knew that because I had attended the menu tasting there with Tessa when Daniel got stuck at work. The back wall had framed mirrors and 2 emergency exits. I was told the immediate family tables were near the dance floor. They are. Tessa said it without cruelty. That made it worse. If she had sneered, I could have become angry. Anger has furniture. You can sit down in it, brace your feet, know where you are. This was air. Daniel held out one of the champagne glasses. "Here, Mom." I looked at it. "What?" "I don't want champagne. You always drink champagne at weddings." "At weddings, yes." His mouth tightened. "This is a wedding." Behind us, another guest approached the seating display, felt the temperature around our little group, and abruptly became fascinated by the floral arrangement. Tessa handed my card back to me. We went with relationship groupings instead of just bride's side and groom's side. It made more sense. To whom? Marion, she said, very softly now. She used my name when she wanted to remind me that we were both adult women. On ordinary days, I respected it. I turned the card over. Blank. No explanation appeared on the back, no tiny asterisk saying that the groom's mother had been accidentally confused with a former tennis partner. Peter is at table 2, I said. Daniel took a drink from the glass he had offered me. Tessa answered. Peter and Adrienne are seated with us. Because they're present family, it isn't a ranking. Then what does past mean? Daniel glanced toward the ballroom. Guests were beginning to file in. The band leader tested a microphone, sending a dull thump through the speakers. Can we not do this right here? He asked. I almost laughed. Right here was where they had put it, in gold lettering. Tessa shifted her weight. For the first time, she looked tired, not guilty. Tired. We're trying to start our marriage with clear lines. Peter is Daniel's father. Adrienne is his wife. They're a current family unit. And I'm what? An expired one? That's not what I said. You read it aloud because you said it was wrong. A server came by carrying a tray of sparkling water. Daniel stepped aside to let him pass, though there was plenty of room. My son was always considerate at the worst possible time. I knew what everyone expected from me. I had been rehearsing the role for years without realizing it. Smile. Lower my voice. Protect Daniel from the consequence of watching his mother be hurt. Tell Tessa she looked beautiful. Blame the hotel. Blame the printer. Blame the confusing modern language people used for simple old meanness. I also knew exactly how I would be described if I refused. Difficult, emotional, possessive, unable to let go. 3 days earlier, Tessa had sat at my kitchen counter eating chicken salad directly from the container while I repaired the sleeve of her rehearsal dress. I don't know what I'd do without you, she had said. She had meant it. That was the strange thing. Tessa was not someone who lied for sport. She believed whatever was useful to believe in the moment she said it. On Tuesday, I was the only person she trusted with a needle near a dress that cost more than my first car. On Saturday, I was a previous family connection. Daniel reached for my elbow. Mom. I moved before his fingers landed. It was a tiny motion. Still, he noticed. Did you know? I asked him. Know what? About the label. Tessa did most of the seating. That isn't what I asked. His eyes flicked toward her. There it was, quick as a match strike. Tessa saw me see it. We reviewed the whole chart together, she said. Daniel's face changed. I didn't focus on every heading. You changed Uncle Ray's table because he can't sit near a speaker, Tessa said. This is not helping. No, I said, it is. I had driven Uncle Ray to an audiologist the month before. Daniel knew exactly why the speaker mattered. He had reviewed the chart closely enough to move a man 2 tables, but somehow not closely enough to notice where his mother had been filed. A wedding coordinator appeared at Tessa's side with a headset clipped over one ear. Her name was Shelby, and she had spent the entire day moving briskly while asking everyone else to remain calm. They're ready to announce you in about 3 minutes, she said. Then she looked at our faces. Everything okay? Tessa turned toward her with an effortless smile. Everything's fine. Shelby looked at me. I could have said no. The word rose right to the back of my teeth. Instead, I held up my card. Could you show me to table 19? Of course. Daniel exhaled. It wasn't relief exactly, but it was close enough that I heard it. Mom, he said, we'll talk later. There are promises people make because they intend to keep them, and promises they make because they need you to leave the current moment quietly. Daniel had been making the second kind since he was old enough to say, I'll call you after work. I followed Shelby into the ballroom. The place looked beautiful. I can say that without bitterness because it did. Hundreds of warm lights hung above us like captured stars. The centerpieces were low bowls of white roses with rosemary tucked between them, an idea Tessa and I had come up with after rejecting arrangements tall enough to prevent conversation. Each table had a gold number standing upright in a small wooden base. Table 2 was just beyond the dance floor. Peter was already there, laughing with Adrienne and examining a bottle of red wine. My place setting had been beside his on the first draft. I remembered because Tessa had asked whether sitting near Peter would make me uncomfortable. I was married to him for 21 years, I'd told her. I can survive a salad. She had laughed so hard she snorted. Then she made me promise never to tell Daniel that she snorted. Table 19 sat behind the band's right speaker, near the windows, I said. Shelby followed my gaze to the mirrored wall. I'm sorry? Nothing. She touched the back of a chair. Here you are. 5 people were already seated. A silver-haired woman in green lifted her place card and squinted at it. Are you past family, too? She asked. Shelby froze. The woman smiled at me. Apparently, I'm vintage Tessa. I recognized her then. Ellen Vaughn, Tessa's aunt. She had hosted the bridal shower but had not been included in the church photographs. Beside her sat Marcus Bell, Daniel's college roommate, who stood and hugged me with one arm. Mrs. Hale. Thank God. I thought they put me with the exiles. They did, Ellen said. We just have better flowers. The others laughed. I did too, because the alternative was setting something on fire, and all the candles were enclosed in glass. I placed my purse beneath my chair and set the cream card beside my plate. From table 19, I could see Daniel and Tessa waiting outside the ballroom doors for their grand entrance. Tessa adjusted his boutonniere. Daniel bent his head so she could whisper something in his ear. Then he looked across the room and found me. For a moment, his expression softened. He lifted his hand slightly, the beginning of a private wave. I almost answered. Then Tessa took his hand, the ballroom doors opened, and everyone rose to welcome the new family. The room broke into applause. Daniel and Tessa came through the doors with their arms raised, laughing as the band played a bright, brassy version of Signed, Sealed, Delivered. Daniel spun her once, carefully, mindful of the dress. For those few seconds, he looked so uncomplicatedly happy that my body responded before my pride could interfere. I clapped. I smiled. Ellen Vaughn leaned close enough for me to hear her over the music. Don't worry, she said. Loving them and wanting to shake them can happen at the same time. I'm not worried. That makes one of us. She waved enthusiastically when Tessa looked our way. Tessa's smile flickered but remained in place. The newlyweds moved directly into their first dance. Everyone stayed standing until Shelby began making downward motions with both hands, like a flight attendant demonstrating an emergency landing. Marcus held my chair for me. You still do that? I asked. My mother believes manners are the only thing separating us from wolves. How is she? Still disappointed in my posture. Marcus had lived with Daniel for 3 years after college. He was broad-shouldered, bald now, and wearing a burgundy suit that made him look like a very elegant jar of jam. I had not seen him since he moved to Denver, though he still sent me a Christmas card every year. I didn't know you were back, I said. Moved home in February. Daniel didn't mention it. Marcus looked toward the dance floor. We haven't talked much. There was no accusation in his voice, which somehow made me more curious. Across from us, Ellen tapped her knife lightly against her water glass until the man beside her stopped examining his phone. She introduced him as Russell, a former business partner of Peter's. The woman on Russell's other side was Naomi Grant, an old friend of Daniel's who had worked with him at his first job. The final seat belonged to a soft-spoken man named Leonard, who told me he had known Peter before Peter became Peter, then refused to clarify. We should go around and say what got us banished, Ellen suggested. Russell lifted his wine. I audited Peter. Socially or financially? Socially, I suppose. The finances were fine. Leonard smiled into his napkin. Marcus said, I forgot to answer 3 group texts. Death, Ellen said solemnly. The traditional punishment. Naomi looked uncomfortable. I'm not banished. Tessa probably just arranged people by how they know each other. Yes, Ellen said, and Marion and I know each other from our many years in the penal system. I should have been offended by the joking. Instead, I was grateful for it. Nobody asked me to say what I was feeling. Nobody tilted their head and touched my wrist. On the dance floor, Daniel had one hand at Tessa's waist and the other wrapped around hers. They were not good dancers, but they were careful. Daniel counted under his breath when he danced. I could tell from the movement of his mouth. When he was 27, he took me to a cousin's wedding because the woman he had been dating broke up with him the week before. During the reception, he insisted we try a swing dance neither of us knew. He stepped on my foot, apologized, and then stepped on the same foot again. You're not leading, I told him. I don't know where we're going. That's what leading is half the time. He had laughed so hard we had to stop. I watched him guide Tessa through a modest turn. He had learned something since then. Dinner began with salads arranged to look as if lettuce had grown in circles. I tried a bite and discovered a walnut under a leaf. Ellen stabbed at hers. This salad has architecture. It was Tessa's choice, I said automatically. I know. I complimented it. Daniel came to our table before the main course. He stopped first behind Ellen's chair and bent to kiss her cheek. Aunt Ellen, you made it. She looked up at him. I responded yes in writing and everything. I know. I just haven't seen you yet. You've been busy. There was enough warmth between them to make the table assignment even stranger. Daniel moved around the chairs, shaking hands, clapping Marcus on the shoulder, telling Naomi she looked wonderful. When he reached me, he put both hands on the back of the empty chair beside mine. You okay? Are you? I'm getting married. You already got married, right? He smiled faintly, still getting used to the tense. I picked up my water. He bent closer. I can have Shelby move you. Where? We'll find a spot. There was a spot. Mom, what happens to the person you move so I can have it? He glanced around the table. Ellen smiled pleasantly at him. No one has to be moved, he said. We can fit another chair. At a table set for 10, they'll make it work. They made this work. He rubbed his thumb against the back of the chair. That was a habit he had when he wanted to say something but was editing it for safety. The heading was a bad choice, he said. Whose choice? I don't know. It might have been from the planning template. Ellen coughed into her wine. Daniel looked at her. Sorry, she said. Template allergy. He straightened. I came over to see if Mom was all right. Your mother is sitting right here, Ellen replied. I set down my glass. I'm fine, Daniel. His face relaxed, but only a little. He knew my versions of fine. There was the genuine one, the polite one, and the one that meant I had not yet selected a response appropriate for witnesses. Breakfast is at 8? He asked. 8:30. I thought we said 8. You said 8. Tessa said nobody would come before 8:30. Right. He looked toward the head table. Could you bring my passport? It's in the top drawer of the desk. You left your passport at my house? I put it there when we were doing the honeymoon folders. I didn't want to lose it. So you hid it from yourself. That appears to be what I did. Despite myself, I smiled. Daniel had once stored a spare set of car keys inside the car. He touched my shoulder. Thank you. I could have told him to retrieve it himself. I wanted to. But he and Tessa were flying to Lisbon the following afternoon, and I had already promised to check their documents before they left. Whatever happened next, I would not let the first move be something they could dismiss as wedding day spite. I'll bring it, I said. Love you. You too. He squeezed my shoulder, greeted the rest of the table again, and returned to his bride. Ellen watched him go. That's the trouble with people we love. What? They're rarely awful enough to make things easy. The entree was short rib with mashed potatoes and asparagus. I had voted for the chicken during the tasting, but Tessa said chicken communicated conference luncheon. She was right. The short rib was better. During the meal, Marcus told me he had reached out to Daniel twice since returning home. Daniel answered both times warmly and suggested they meet. Each time he never committed to a date. He's been planning a wedding, Naomi offered. I know, Marcus said. I'm not mad. Lives move. You were at his bachelor weekend, I said, for dinner. I wasn't invited on the trip. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Peter went. Marcus smiled. Peter can probably afford golf in Arizona better than I can. He changed the subject, asking whether I still had the ugly yellow sofa he and Daniel had moved into my house after the divorce. It had belonged to my mother, and both men had complained through the entire job. I got rid of it last year. Marcus put a hand to his chest. We carried that thing up 6 steps. You scratched the front door. Daniel scratched the door. I provided strategic guidance. The band leader announced the toasts before dessert. Tessa's maid of honor gave a funny, affectionate speech about Tessa making color-coded itineraries for casual weekends. Daniel's best man, a man from his firm named Graham, spoke about loyalty and ambition and used the phrase power couple twice. Then Peter stood. He buttoned his jacket and waited for the room to settle. Peter had always understood that silence could be collected if you believed it belonged to you. When Daniel asked me to say a few words, he began, I thought about all the advice a father is supposed to give his son on his wedding day. I looked at Daniel. He was smiling. Peter told a story about building a deck with him the summer after college. It was a good story, polished by repetition. In Peter's version, Daniel had tried to measure every board 3 times, while Peter taught him that a man eventually had to trust his hands. What Peter did not mention was that the deck belonged to a woman he was dating. He and Daniel had worked on it for one Saturday afternoon, argued over a circular saw, and abandoned the project before dinner. A contractor finished it. Still, the room laughed when Peter described Daniel holding the level as though it might testify against him. The lesson, Peter said, lifting his glass, was that building a life requires faith. You measure carefully, but then you make the cut. It was a fine line. I wondered where he had found it. Peter looked at Tessa. You are exactly the woman I hoped my son would find. Strong, clear, and determined to build something new. Adrian dabbed the corner of one eye. And Daniel, Peter continued, I have never been prouder to call you my son. Everyone raised their glasses. I did too. There was no reason not to. Peter was proud. The fact that he had arrived late to the feeling did not make it false. After the toast, the band leader announced the father-daughter dance. Tessa danced with her father, Malcolm, a reserved man who had spent most of the evening talking to Adrian. Then the song ended, and the band leader called Daniel and me to the floor. Daniel came for me himself. You don't have to, he said when he reached the table. Don't have to what? Dance, if you're upset. So the choices are dance or prove I'm upset. That's not what I meant. I know. I stood and put my hand in his. The song was What a Wonderful World. I had not chosen it. I had sent Daniel 3 suggestions 2 months earlier and never heard back. This was Peter's favorite song, not mine, but I did not mention that. Daniel placed one hand at my back. You look beautiful, he said. So do you. I look beautiful? Very. He laughed, then glanced down at our feet. I'm trying not to step on you. You've improved. We moved slowly. Around us, guests watched with the gentle expressions people wore when they were witnessing a ritual they already understood. Daniel's grip tightened. I'm sorry about the card, he said. My throat closed so quickly I nearly missed a step. Are you? Of course. Then why am I still at table 19? He looked over my shoulder. I offered to move you. That's not an answer. It was a stupid heading, Mom. Tessa gets very particular when she's stressed. Tessa read it. You defended it. I was trying to keep things calm. For whom? His jaw shifted. The song continued around us, warm and familiar. I wanted one day without a family issue, he said. I pulled back just enough to see his face, and you decided I would be the issue. No. That isn't what Applause rose as the song ended. Daniel kissed my cheek. To everyone watching, it must have looked tender. It was tender. That was the part I could not forgive my heart for noticing. When I returned to table 19, the cream card still lay beside my plate. Someone had spilled a drop of red wine across the word "passed." I touched the corner of my napkin to the wine. The stain spread. "Leave it," Ellen said. "It improves the design." Russell had knocked his glass while reaching for the bread basket. He apologized 3 times, though the drop had not touched me or anything I owned. I slid the card closer to my plate and covered it with my phone. Dessert arrived after the dances, a narrow slice of lemon cake with raspberry filling. The wedding cake itself stood on a round table near the dance floor, 5 white tiers decorated with sugar flowers, so convincing that Leonard tried to smell one. "Fondant," he reported. "We're all fondant tonight," Ellen said. Pretty from a distance and difficult to digest. Tessa and Daniel cut the first slice while the photographer circled them. Daniel put a respectful dab of frosting on Tessa's nose. She stared at him for half a second, then laughed and returned the favor. The room relaxed with her. I knew that laugh. It was real. Daniel knew how to find the place beneath her planning where she could be silly, and Tessa knew how to make him feel more decisive than he usually did. I had seen them rescue each other from their worst habits. That was why the card could not be explained by saying she was terrible and he was weak. Life rarely gives you people arranged that conveniently. While servers distributed cake, Shelby approached our table with her headset slightly crooked. "Marion? We're doing the generational photographs in 5 minutes." "Generational?" "The immediate family groupings." Ellen lifted one eyebrow. I stood before she could speak. "Where?" "By the west staircase." The west staircase was actually north, but weddings operated on their own compass. I checked the restroom first. My lipstick had faded except for a dark red outline that made me look as though I had eaten the center of my own mouth. I was fixing it when Adrienne came in. She saw me in the mirror and slowed. Marion. Adrienne. She was wearing pale silver, a color I would have avoided because it photographed one gust away from white. On her, it looked elegant. Adrienne could wear a bath towel to a bank and leave with a lower interest rate. "That dress is gorgeous on you," she said. "Thank you. You look lovely." We both turned toward the mirror, 2 women united by our desire not to conduct a real conversation beneath fluorescent lighting. Adrienne opened her handbag. "Peter's tie is crooked. I'm sure he blames the tie." She laughed, then looked guilty for enjoying it. I capped my lipstick. "I wanted to ask you something," she said. "That sentence never improves an evening." "All right. Were you supposed to be sitting with us?" I met her eyes in the mirror. "Why do you ask?" "Because there's an empty chair at table 2. I had not noticed. From where I sat, Peter's body had blocked that side of the table. Maybe somebody canceled. It has a place setting, but no name card. Tessa's particular. I doubt she forgot a name card. Adrienne closed her purse. "Peter said the seating was complicated. Peter says tying his shoes is complicated if somebody asks him to help afterward." Her mouth twitched, but she did not let herself laugh this time. "I told him we could switch." "With whom?" "Me." That surprised me enough that I turned around. Adrienne touched a pearl earring, checking the clasp. "You're Daniel's mother, and you're Peter's wife." "Yes, I'm aware." Her voice sharpened, then softened. "I didn't ask for your chair. I know. I mean that literally. Tessa called and asked us to sit with them. She said it mattered to Daniel. I believed her. Adrienne had never tried to replace me. She enjoyed the version of Peter who had reached an age when dinner reservations counted as reliability, but she had not created the younger one who left me to explain his absences. "You should stay where they seated you," I said. She studied me. "That sounds like an instruction, not forgiveness." "It's neither. It's a seating arrangement." The restroom door opened and 2 women I barely knew entered mid-conversation. Adrienne checked her reflection once more. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I'm sorry." I wanted to tell her it was worth something. Instead, I nodded and walked out, because accepting kindness can be harder when it comes from the wrong person. At the staircase, Daniel stood between Tessa and Peter, while the photographer arranged Malcolm and Tessa's mother, Vivian, on the other side. Adrian joined Peter. I took the open place beside Daniel. The photographer looked through his camera. Great, close together. Daniel put his arm around me. Tessa leaned toward him, but not toward me. The resulting shape must have looked like a chain with one loose link. Marion, a little closer, the photographer said. I moved until my shoulder touched Daniel's. Perfect. Big smiles. The flash went off. Now one with parents and spouses, he said. I looked around for someone to tell me whether a divorced mother counted as a parent or a spouse. Shelby guided Peter and Adrian forward. Vivian and Malcolm remained beside Tessa. Daniel stayed in the center. I stepped back. The photographer lowered his camera. Groom's mom, we need you. Tessa adjusted her bouquet. Just Marion for this one, just Marion. I moved into place again. Adrian gave me a small, apologetic smile. Peter seemed oblivious or chose oblivion because it fit better. After 3 more photographs, I thought we were finished. Then Tessa asked for the current couples. Vivian and Malcolm stood together. Peter and Adrian stood together. Daniel and Tessa stood between them. I was holding Tessa's bouquet again. No one asked me to step out. No one had to. The photographer took the picture. Peter found me afterward near the bar and offered me a bourbon as if we had survived the same experience. You holding up? He asked. Against what? He nodded toward the dance floor. All this. I like weddings. Sure, but it's emotional. Only son. He was my only son yesterday, too. Peter accepted his drink from the bartender. You know what I mean. I did, but I did not feel like helping him say it. He sipped his bourbon. Tessa did a hell of a job. The rosemary in the centerpieces was my suggestion. He stared at the nearest arrangement. That's rosemary. Do you cook with it? You know I don't cook. I haven't known what you do for 15 years. That's not fair. It was exactly fair, which was why he disliked it. He rested an elbow on the bar. I'm trying here, Marion. At what? With Daniel? With you, even. Winking at me in church isn't reconciliation. I was being friendly. You looked like you just sold me a used boat. He laughed. Peter's laughter had always arrived before he decided whether something was funny. Then he sobered. I told Tessa you should be near Daniel. That got my attention. When? Couple weeks ago. She mentioned some tension over the seating. I said put everybody together and let the wine do its job. So you knew where I was sitting? I knew she was working through it. I didn't see the final version. Did Daniel? Peter looked down at his bourbon. He did not lie well when the lie might require follow-up questions. You should ask him, he said. I did. What did he say? That he didn't focus on every heading. Peter winced. It was small, but it was honest. Marion, tonight isn't the night. Apparently, everybody got the same memo. He opened his mouth, closed it, then raised his glass toward me. The rosemary looks good. I left him at the bar. By 11, the older guests had begun disappearing and the younger ones had taken off their shoes. Ellen danced with Russell to September, while Leonard clapped from his chair. Marcus persuaded me onto the floor for half a song. He still danced as though avoiding furniture. Daniel and Tessa moved from group to group, radiant and exhausted. Every time Daniel came near me, someone pulled him away. I could not tell whether he was trying to reach me or trying to appear as though he had tried. I stayed through the cake, the photographs, and the bouquet toss, though the bouquet landed between 2 startled women and was claimed by a waiter. I waited until Daniel and Tessa had joined a circle of friends before collecting my purse. The card had dried with the wine stain across it. I slipped it into the side pocket of my bag. I told myself I kept it because leaving it behind would create work for a server. At the coat check, Ellen found me putting on my wrap. Leaving? I'm hosting breakfast in the morning. Her face changed. Of course you are. Don't. I didn't say anything. You're very loud when you don't say anything. She held out her hand. Give me your phone. Why? so I can put my number in it. We're not starting a support group. Good. I hate groups. I handed it over. She entered her contact information, called herself so she would have mine, then returned the phone. You handled tonight with a lot of grace, she said. Grace is sometimes just shock with good posture. Then you have excellent posture. Outside, the hotel driveway glistened from a brief rain. My car smelled faintly of the breakfast pastries I had picked up that afternoon and stored in the trunk. I drove home with the radio off. The house was dark except for the lamp I had left on beside the sofa. Tessa's rehearsal dress still hung from the back of the guest room door under a clear garment bag. She had changed at my house before the dinner and forgotten it. 3 pearl-headed pins rested in a saucer on the dresser. I went to the desk and opened the top drawer. Daniel's passport sat beneath a folder labeled Honeymoon in Tessa's handwriting. Inside were printed copies of their hotel reservation, flight details, walking tours, and a typed list titled Things Marion Has, Passport Dog Key, Medication Schedule, Emergency Vet Number, Breakfast Serving Platters. At the bottom, Tessa had written, Confirm Airport Ride. I read the list once, then placed the passport on top of the folder. My phone buzzed. Daniel had sent a photograph of us dancing. My face was turned toward his shoulder. His eyes were closed. Love you, Mom. Thank you for making today easy. I stood alone in the quiet room, still wearing the blue silk dress, and read the last word again. Easy. I set the phone face down on the desk and changed out of my dress. The zipper stuck halfway, and for a moment I was trapped with one arm behind me and blue silk pulled over my head. There was probably a metaphor available, but I was too tired to use it. I worked the zipper free, hung the dress, and found one of Tessa's loose pearls clinging to my stocking. I placed it in the saucer with the pins. At 6:10 the next morning, I was cracking 18 eggs into a mixing bowl. The breakfast strata had been assembled the day before, but I did not trust food that came out of the refrigerator looking complete. I added more cheese, whisked extra eggs with milk, and poured the mixture over the top. My mother believed every recipe could be improved by disregarding it slightly. There were 12 people expected. I had food for 20. By 7, bacon was draining on paper towels, coffee was brewing, and I had arranged fruit on 2 white platters Tessa borrowed so often that her honeymoon list described them as breakfast serving platters instead of my breakfast serving platters. I carried one to the dining table and caught my reflection in the china cabinet. My face looked puffy. I had slept badly and dreamed that I was searching the hotel for table 19, while a string quartet followed me from room to room. The doorbell rang at 8:20. Adrienne stood on the porch holding a bakery box. Peter was behind her with 2 bottles of sparkling wine tucked under one arm. We're early, she said. You're 10 minutes early. Peter said it started at 8. Peter stepped inside. Daniel said 8. Tessa said 8:30. Marriage, he said, as if he had just identified the murderer. Adrienne handed me the box. Cinnamon rolls. They're probably redundant. No breakfast pastry is redundant. That's why I like her, Peter told Adrienne. You were married to her for 21 years, Adrienne said. I assume you found something. I liked Adrienne more every time she refused to make Peter comfortable. She followed me into the kitchen and immediately began transferring bacon to a serving dish without asking where anything was. Peter opened a cabinet, found water glasses, rejected them, and opened another. What are you looking for? I asked. Champagne flutes, top shelf. He looked up. That shelf? The one at the top. That's hostel storage. Adrienne reached over him and took down 6 flutes. She was 2 inches shorter than he was. Malcolm and Vivian arrived next, carrying a pot of coffee from a shop even though I had told them I owned a coffee maker. Vivian wore sunglasses in the house for the first 15 minutes and communicated mostly through sounds. Malcolm shook my hand and said, "Fine ceremony," as though we had both attended a municipal dedication. Graham, the best man, came with his wife, Celeste. Tessa's maid of honor, Brooke, arrived alone and apologized for existing before 9. By 8:40, everyone was present except the bride and groom. Peter checked his watch. Should we wait? No, Vivian said from behind her sunglasses. She knows where food lives. I invited everyone to begin. They filled plates, praised the strata, and told stories about the reception. Graham had lost one shoe for an hour. Brooke had found 2 unfamiliar cell phones in her purse. Malcolm claimed he had danced to 4 songs, though Vivian insisted standing near the band did not qualify. At 8:52, the front door opened without a knock. "Mom," Daniel called. In the kitchen. He appeared wearing jeans, a wrinkled white shirt, and the expression of a man who had spent the night being congratulated. Tessa came behind him in cream trousers and a navy sweater. Her hair was tied back, and without the formal makeup, she looked younger and more tired. Daniel kissed my cheek. "You found the passport?" "Good morning." "Good morning. You found it?" "It's on the desk." His shoulders dropped. Thank God. Tessa hugged me carefully, then stepped back and held my arms. "This is incredible," she said, looking toward the dining room. "You did all this after last night?" "I did most of it before last night. Still." "You're amazing." The compliment landed somewhere useless. Daniel went to retrieve the passport. Tessa took a mug from the cabinet and poured coffee. "Did Mabel eat?" she asked. "At 6:30. And the medication? Inside a piece of cheese. She spit it out for me Friday. I used better cheese." Tessa smiled. Mabel was their 11-year-old beagle, shaped like an ottoman and suspicious of any pill not wrapped in dairy. She was asleep under my kitchen table where she had stationed herself the moment Bacon entered the house. "I knew leaving her here was the right choice," Tessa said. "You've left her here before." "I know. She thinks this is her vacation home." Daniel returned holding the passport and the honeymoon folder. "You went through this?" he asked. "You told me to check the documents." "Right." He flipped through the pages. "Where's the Lisbon hotel confirmation?" Behind the flight details. He found it exactly where I said. "You save us," he said. I turned toward the oven. The strata is getting cold. Everyone squeezed around the dining table. There were only 10 chairs, so Peter and Graham carried in 2 from the living room. Tessa sat beside Daniel at one end. I ended up near the kitchen door where I could get up without asking anyone to move. Peter poured the sparkling wine and proposed a toast to safe travels. Daniel raised orange juice because he said the sight of champagne made his skull hurt. "To the first adventure," Peter said. "The wedding wasn't the first adventure?" Brooke asked. "That was the departure lounge." Everyone liked that. Peter always had one good sentence waiting. As we ate, Tessa described their itinerary: Lisbon for 4 nights, then Porto, then a few days in the Douro Valley. She had scheduled 2 unscheduled afternoons, which made Brooke laugh so hard she choked on bacon. "I like knowing when I'm relaxing," Tessa said. Daniel rested his arm across the back of her chair. She made a spreadsheet of spontaneous possibilities. "You loved it. I printed it." Watching them, I understood again why Daniel had chosen her. He had spent much of his adult life being afraid that one wrong decision would disappoint somebody. Tessa made decisions and laminated them. Beside her, he could mistake certainty for peace. That did not mean the peace was false. It only meant somebody else sometimes paid for it. After breakfast, the guests scattered through the house with coffee. Peter and Malcolm examined a loose hinge on the back door and disagreed about screw sizes. Vivian and Adrienne helped me clear plates. Tessa carried the white platters into the kitchen. "I'll wash these," she said. "They go in the dishwasher. You never put them in the dishwasher." "I do when nobody is watching." She laughed, then lowered her voice. "Thank you for last night." "For what part?" Her hand stopped over the sink. "For being gracious." "I was at my son's wedding." "I know, but seeding gets emotional. There's no way to make everyone happy. There might have been a way not to label me past family." Her shoulders settled, not drooped, settled, as if she had known this conversation would come and was relieved to reach the prepared section. It wasn't meant as an insult. What was it meant as? A practical grouping. You could have written groom's mother. That would have made the table categories inconsistent. I looked at her. She heard it then. Not the cruelty, perhaps, but the absurdity. I know it sounds rigid, she said, but when families change, people get hurt because nobody is honest about the change. Daniel and I are the primary family now. That doesn't mean you don't matter. Your father and mother were at table 2. They're married to each other. Peter left my marriage. He didn't leave Daniel. Exactly. The word came too quickly. I folded the damp dish towel over the oven handle. Exactly what? Peter is still Daniel's father. Adrienne is his spouse. You're Peter's former spouse. I'm Daniel's mother. I know that. Did the card? Tessa glanced toward the doorway. The others were still talking in the living room. Daniel's laugh carried above Peter's. You and Daniel have had a very close relationship, she said. There are phrases that arrive wearing soft shoes because they expect to walk through your house unchallenged. We're mother and son. You're more involved than most mothers are at his age. He asked me to host this breakfast. I'm not criticizing you. You're standing in my kitchen explaining why I'm past family. That's not what I'm trying to do. What are you trying to do? Her eyes grew bright, though her voice remained level. I'm trying to start my marriage without feeling like I have to earn a place you already occupy. That stopped me. Not because it was fair, because it was honest. I thought of all the Sundays Tessa had sat at this counter while Daniel wandered in and out of the room. She would ask where I kept something. Daniel would answer for me. She would suggest a restaurant. He would say I had already started dinner. Once, when they were discussing apartments, Daniel told her he could never live more than 20 minutes from my house. I had been flattered. I had not asked how she felt. I never asked him to choose, I said. You don't have to ask. He watches your face. The accusation was quiet enough to carry truth. I leaned against the counter. Then why didn't you talk to me before the wedding? I thought the seating would make the boundaries clear without turning it into a whole discussion. You printed a humiliation and hoped typography would do the work. Her face hardened. That's a dramatic way to describe a table card. You read it aloud because you challenged it in front of people. I thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. The kitchen became very still. Tessa looked away first. I'm sorry you were hurt. That apology had no owner. Daniel entered holding Mabel's leash. Ready? He asked. Tessa picked up her coffee. We should go. He looked between us. Everything okay? Tessa answered before I could. We were talking about the seating. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Now? Your mother brought it up. My mother has a name, I said. He looked at me. I know that. Do you? The leash slid through his hand. Mabel did not move from beneath the table. Daniel lowered his voice. We have to leave for the airport in 40 minutes. I'm aware. I read the folder. He stepped closer. Can we talk when we get back? Tessa crossed her arms. I don't think there's anything else to say. I looked at my new daughter-in-law, then at my son. He was waiting for me to rescue the departure from discomfort. I could see the request in the careful set of his mouth. All right, I said, when you get back. He smiled with exhausted gratitude. Tessa gathered her bag. I found my car keys and drove them to the airport. At the curb, Daniel unloaded their suitcases while Tessa checked the airline app. He kissed my cheek, hugged me with one arm, and said, Take care of our girl. Mabel watched through the back window as they disappeared through the sliding doors. On the drive home, she climbed into the front seat at the first red light and placed one heavy paw on my thigh. Don't start, I told her. She sighed and leaned against me anyway. Mabel had no objection to my driving, but she disapproved of stopping. At every red light, she groaned as if I had personally delayed traffic. By the time we reached my house, she had left a wet crescent of drool on my sleeve and filled the front seat with pale hair. I led her into the yard, then returned to the kitchen. The breakfast aftermath waited for me. 12 coffee cups, 10 plates, 3 champagne flutes, and a skillet Peter had placed in the sink to soak, though he had added no water. I tied on an apron and worked until the counters were clean. Tessa's white platters went back into my cabinet. I found the seating card when I emptied my purse. The wine stain had dried from a bright red to the brownish color of old blood. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I placed it in the honeymoon folder beneath the typed list of things I had. It seemed fair to keep the paperwork together. Mabel came in carrying a clump of wet grass in her mouth. Absolutely not. She stared at me. You have a yard at home. This cannot be exciting. She swallowed the grass. Tessa texted before I could stop her. Did she take the pill? Yes. Can you send a picture? I looked down. Mabel was licking bacon grease from a cabinet door. I wiped her face with a towel and took a photograph in the living room where she arranged herself on the rug with the grave dignity of a senator. Tessa responded with 3 hearts. Daniel did not mention our conversation. That evening, he sent a photograph from the airport lounge. Tessa was asleep against his shoulder, and he was holding up a glass of wine. Made it. Thank you for everything. I typed, we'll talk when you get back. I watched the 3 dots appear, disappear, and appear again. Definitely. Love you. Then he sent a heart, as if punctuation had failed us. I slept late the next morning and woke with Mabel stretched sideways across the foot of the bed. Daniel and Tessa had forbidden her from sleeping on furniture. Mabel and I agreed that rules made in another country lacked jurisdiction. My phone showed 2 messages from Lorna. The first said, survived Santa Fe. Bought a bowl I can't afford. How was the wedding? The second, sent 7 minutes later, said, your silence has made this question more interesting. I called her. Lorna answered with, who cried? Everybody cries at weddings. Who cried for the wrong reason? I sat at the edge of the bed. What makes you think somebody did? Marion, we've been friends for 18 years. When things go well, you tell me what people ate. When things go badly, you become the State Department. I looked at Mabel. She was awake, but pretending otherwise. The short rib was excellent. Oh, God, I told her about the card. Lorna did not interrupt. That frightened me more than any outrage would have. She was a retired respiratory therapist who regarded silence as a tool for making people confess. When I finished, she said, read me the exact words. Past family, table 19. And Tessa read it aloud? Yes. And Daniel? He asked me not to make the day harder. Lorna inhaled slowly through her nose. In her professional years, that breath had probably preceded many conversations about smoking. What did you do? I sat at table 19. Of course you did. What was I supposed to do? Throw the cake? A smaller cake, maybe. It had 5 tiers, then one of the decorative flowers. I laughed, despite myself. Mabel opened one eye. Lorna's voice softened. How are you? I don't know. That's not like you. I know. You're usually wrong with confidence. That bowl you bought is ugly. You haven't seen it. It's from Santa Fe and you couldn't afford it. It's turquoise and shaped like regret. It's magnificent. She invited me to lunch the next day. My first instinct was to say I could not leave Mabel. Then Mabel jumped off the bed, walked into the hallway and farted. I'm free at noon, I said. Over the next 11 days, I learned how often Daniel and Tessa occupied my life, even when they were not physically in it. Daniel usually called on his way home from work 2 or 3 evenings a week. Sometimes he needed an opinion. Sometimes he wanted to complain about Peter. Often he had no reason at all. On Sundays, he and Tessa arrived around 5, unless they had other plans. I cooked because I liked cooking. They stayed because they liked being fed. Nobody had declared it an obligation. That was the trouble with habits. By the time they became obligations, everyone had forgotten who made the first choice. From Portugal, Daniel sent photographs. Yellow streetcars, tiled walls, Tessa beneath a red umbrella, a plate of grilled fish with the message, "You would hate the bones." He was right. I hated any meal that looked capable of identifying me later. Tessa's messages were almost entirely about Mabel. Did she eat? Did it thunder? Her left ear looks red in that picture. Can you check? I checked the ear. It was fine. Neither of them mentioned the wedding or the kitchen conversation. It was as though our agreement to talk had been placed in luggage that never arrived. I had lunch with Lorna 3 times. The first time, she spent 20 minutes insulting Tessa. I defended Tessa until we were both irritated. She called you past family, Lorna said. She also spent 6 weekends helping me repaint the guest room. Was Daniel using the guest room? No. Was she? Sometimes. Lorna pointed her fork at me. That isn't a defense. I'm not defending the card. I'm saying she's not a cartoon villain. She can be 3-dimensional and still needs somebody to tell her she's mean. She thinks Daniel and I are too involved. Are you? The question annoyed me because I had been waiting for it. I don't know. Yes, you do. I looked toward the cafe window. A delivery truck blocked most of the view. When Peter left, Daniel worried about me. He was 20. I know how old he was. You called him every night. For a while, for 2 years. Not every night. Lorna gave me the look she had once used when I claimed a hair color came from sunlight. I stirred my coffee. I was lonely. I know. I never asked him to fix it. You didn't have to ask. He's a fixer. He loses his passport in my desk. Exactly. The waiter passed with a tray of sandwiches. Lorna waited until he was out of earshot. You taught Daniel that loving you meant being available, she said. Then he taught you the same thing. That hurt because it did not assign blame neatly. So Tessa was right. About the relationship needing air? Maybe. About humiliating you to get it? No. I went home and stood in the guest room beneath Tessa's rehearsal dress. The room contained a surprising amount of their life. Daniel's old camping gear occupied half the closet. A set of Tessa's luggage nested beneath the bed. There were wedding place cards left over from a trial design, 2 frame photographs they had not decided where to hang, and a box of holiday ornaments Daniel wanted me to keep because their apartment storage was limited. My house had become their attic, restaurant, kennel, emergency office, and emotional waiting room. I had allowed it because every object suggested they would return. On Friday, Daniel called from Porto. Mom, quick question. Do you remember the name of the medication Peter took after his knee surgery? No. You drove him home from the hospital. That was 14 years ago. He says you'll remember. Peter believes I'm an external hard drive. Daniel laughed. Fair. Ask Adrian. He says she's in yoga. Yoga ends. There was a pause. How are you? I asked. Good. Great. Tired. Tessa has walked me up every hill in Portugal. You knew she liked an itinerary. I didn't know Europe was vertical. I smiled. Then he said, We're okay, right? The question came so gently that my answer nearly followed the old path. We need to talk when you're home. About the card? About more than the card. He exhaled. Can we not let it become more than the card? It already is. Tessa feels terrible. Has she said that? She knows you're upset. That isn't the same thing. Mom, I'm calling from another country. I don't want to do this over the phone. Then don't. You're doing that thing. What thing? Where you make your voice calm so I sound unreasonable if I get upset. I sat very still. He was not entirely wrong. I'm sorry, I said. I'll stop. The apology confused him. Okay, enjoy Porto. We're leaving for the valley tomorrow. Enjoy the valley. I love you. I love you too. After we hung up, I wrote down what I wanted to say. Not a speech, a list. No standing Sunday dinners. No keeping the guest room permanently available. No storing whatever did not fit in their apartment. No managing Daniel's relationship with Peter. No automatic errands. No open door assumption. I crossed out the last one because it sounded like a bank policy. Then I wrote, Call before coming. The list looked petty on paper. Every item was small. Together, they described most of the ways I knew how to be his mother. I folded it and placed it in my desk drawer. When Daniel and Tessa returned, I picked them up from the airport because I had promised. Daniel looked rumpled and happy. Tessa wore a scarf printed with blue birds and kissed both my cheeks as if she had brought Europe home in her carry-on. They gave me a bottle of port and a small painted dish. "For your pins," Tessa said. It was beautiful. Mabel nearly knocked Daniel over when we reached my house. Tessa sat on the floor in her cream travel pants and let the dog climb into her lap. She gained weight, she said. She was emotionally fragile. "You fed her bacon." "Only during medical emergencies." Daniel carried their bags to the car. When he came back inside, he opened my refrigerator. "Do you have anything to eat?" "There's soup." He lifted the lid, smelled it, and found a bowl. Tessa stood and brushed dog hair from her knees. "We'll come Sunday. I've missed your roast chicken so much I could cry." I looked at Daniel. He had already taken a spoon from the drawer. "There won't be dinner Sunday," I said. He glanced up. "You're busy." "No." Tessa's hand stopped on Mabel's collar. I continued before I could soften it into nothing. "I'm not doing standing Sunday dinners anymore. If we want to have dinner together, we can invite each other and choose a day. I'm also clearing the guest room and returning the things you've stored here. And from now on, you need to call before you come over." Daniel set down the spoon. "Why? You said you and Tessa are the primary family now. I heard you." Tessa's face flushed. "So this is retaliation. No, it's a boundary. You wait until we get home and take away everything we do together. But it's not punishment? I waited because I promised to take care of your dog and your travel. I kept those promises." Daniel stared at me. "You're really going to punish me over one card?" I looked at the open refrigerator, the soup in his hand, and my son standing in my kitchen as if access to me had been included with the house. "No," I said. "I'm going to believe it." Daniel stared at me as if I had answered in another language. "Believe what? That I'm no longer part of your primary family." "I never said that." "You stood beside Tessa while she did." Tessa hooked Mabel's leash to her collar with quick, efficient movements. "This is exactly why we needed boundaries." "Then we agree." "No, we don't. A boundary isn't taking things away because your feelings got hurt." "What do you think a boundary is?" "It means recognizing that Daniel's decisions belong to us now." "They should. So should your dinners, your storage, your dog care, your errands, and your arguments with Peter." Daniel pushed the refrigerator door closed. "Nobody said we expected all that. You came home from your honeymoon, opened my refrigerator without saying hello, and announced what I was cooking Sunday. I did say hello. You asked for your passport. That was 2 weeks ago." "Exactly." His face flushed. I hated that I noticed how tired he looked. I hated that part of me wanted to put the soup back on the stove, toast bread, and postpone everything until he had slept. Tessa held Mabel's leash tightly. The dog planted her feet beneath the kitchen table, sensing departure and objecting on principle. "We're grateful for everything you do," Tessa said. "Gratitude isn't the same as entitlement. We don't feel entitled. You called my help things Marion has." Her eyes shifted toward the desk. "You read my list? It was in the folder beneath Daniel's passport. That was a travel checklist. It was accurate." Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. "Can we sit down? You're holding a bowl of soup." He looked at it as though I had placed it there. Then he carried it to the table and sat. Tessa remained standing. I took the chair across from him. Daniel leaned forward. "If this is about the wording, we've said it was bad. You said it was stupid. You haven't said why you allowed it." "I didn't allow anything. You reviewed the chart." I looked at tables. "I didn't write every card." "Tessa told you what the category meant." He glanced at her. "That was enough." Tessa lifted her chin. "Yes," I told him. "When?" "The week before the wedding." Daniel's eyes closed. I had expected the answer. Hearing it still moved something beneath my ribs. What did he say? That he didn't like the phrase. But he understood what I meant. Daniel spoke without looking at me. "I thought nobody would pay attention to the headings. You paid attention to Uncle Ray's speaker." "Mom, I've apologized. You said you were sorry about the card during a dance, then told me you wanted one day without a family issue." I was under pressure. So was I. I managed not to classify anybody. Tessa pulled out the chair beside Daniel and sat. Mabel immediately wedged herself beneath it. "You want him to admit he chose me over you," she said. "No. I want him to admit he chose avoiding an argument with you over protecting me from an insult. That's the same thing to you. It shouldn't be the same thing to either of us." Daniel's eyes moved between our faces. For once, he could not translate one woman into safer language for the other. I saw how often he had done that. I also saw how often I had let him. Tessa's voice softened. "You've been the center of his family for a long time. I understand why change feels like rejection." There it was again. Concern shaped like a verdict. "You may be right that Daniel and I have been too involved," I said. Neither of them expected that. Daniel sat back. Tessa blinked. I continued. "After Peter left, I depended on Daniel more than I should have. He depended on me, too. I kept making it easy because being needed felt better than being alone." "Mom." "No." She raised the question. "I've been thinking about it." Tessa's expression loosened cautiously. "If our relationship needs more air," I said, "then it should get air. But you don't get to say we're too close and then object when I stop running part of your life." "We're not objecting to air," she said. "You called it retaliation. Because it is. You didn't decide this before the wedding. I didn't know I was past family before the wedding. You keep using that phrase like a weapon. You printed it like a place card." Daniel stood so abruptly that his chair scraped the floor. "Stop." Mabel came out from under the table. He looked at Tessa first, then me. "Both of you. I almost told him not to speak to me that way in my own house." The sentence rose, ready and familiar. Then I heard how it would sound. Another demand that he manage the room around my feelings. So I said nothing. He turned to me. "Are we welcome here or not? Yes. Then what does calling first change? It gives me a choice. You always have a choice." "Do I? You still have a key." His hand moved toward his pocket. "I gave you that key for emergencies," I said. "Not Sunday dinner. I don't use it unless you're expecting us. You opened the door this morning. You knew we were coming." "Yes." "That's the point. We've never had to discuss any of it because I always arranged my life to be available." He looked genuinely hurt. "I thought you liked having us here." "I did. I do. That doesn't make every Sunday yours forever." Tessa stood and gathered Mabel's leash. "We should go." Daniel remained still. She said his name. He picked up the soup bowl, hesitated, then placed it in the sink. "Do you want the key now?" I had not planned to ask for it in that moment. Seeing his hand close around it made the question feel harsher than it had on paper. "Yes." He removed one brass key from his ring. I held out my palm. When it dropped into my hand, neither of us spoke. Tessa walked out with Mabel. Daniel lifted the 2 suitcases he had left in the hallway and followed her. At the front door, he turned. "We brought you the dish because we thought you'd like it." "I do like it. It doesn't seem like it." "Thank you for the dish." His mouth tightened. "You're welcome." The door closed. I stood in the hallway holding the key. Mabel barked once from the driveway. A car door slammed. Their engine started and faded down the street. Only then did I realize Daniel had left the bottle of port on the kitchen counter. I did not open it. The following afternoon, Tessa called before coming for her rehearsal dress. Her compliance irritated me more than if she had ignored the rule. That was not fair, and I knew it. She arrived alone, wearing black work pants and carrying the small painted dish in a paper bag. "You left this," she said. "No, you gave it to me." "Oh." She looked down at the bag. "Right." I stepped aside. "The dress is in the guest room." She walked through the house without removing her shoes. Another tiny change. Before, she would have kicked them off near the door and complained about whatever shoes she had chosen. The rehearsal dress still hung beneath its clear cover. Tessa unhooked it and laid it across the bed. "I'm sorry I forgot this. You had other things on your mind." She noticed the 3 pearl pins in the saucer. I gave her the painted dish, and she transferred the pins into it one by one. "I thought you could use it for jewelry," she said. "It's lovely." "Then keep it." "I intend to." Her mouth twitched. "You don't make anything easy. I hosted breakfast the morning after being labeled past family. You keep proving my point. What point is that? That every kindness comes back as evidence." I leaned against the dresser. "That's not entirely untrue." She looked at me, surprised again. "I keep records," I said, "not on paper. Up here." I touched my temple. "Who called? Who didn't? Who needed me? Who remembered? It's not my best quality." "Daniel feels it. He probably does. He says he can tell when you're disappointed even if you say nothing. He can. I can tell when he's lying even if he smiles. We know each other, and there's no room for anyone who doesn't." I thought about that. "There was room for you," I said. "You came here every Sunday, to your house, your table, your traditions. You could have invited me to yours." "We did. Twice. And you reorganized my spice drawer. The cumin was with baking soda. I knew where it was." We stared at each other. Then, against all reason, Tessa laughed. It escaped her like the snort at my kitchen counter. She covered her mouth, annoyed at herself. I laughed too. For 10 seconds, we were the women we had been while repairing her dress. Then she zipped the garment bag. "Daniel thinks you hate me," she said. "I don't." "Do you want us to be married?" "Yes." Her eyes searched my face. "Even now? This isn't about whether I approve of your marriage. It's your marriage." "That sounds very enlightened. It's actually a relief." She did not laugh this time. I said, "I don't hate you, Tessa. I hate what you did. I hate that Daniel allowed it. Those are different things. You want him to choose you. I want him to stop calling cowardice neutrality." Color rose along her neck. "You think he's afraid of me?" "I think he's afraid of disappointing both of us. I think you made sure I was the less expensive disappointment." She lifted the garment bag from the bed. "At least I say what I need. After you print it." She passed me in the doorway, then stopped. "My mother spent her whole marriage accommodating people who didn't respect hers," she said. "Former partners, Peter's sisters, old friends who treated my father like a visitor in his own family. Peter's sisters? My father's sisters. You know what I mean? I do. She called it keeping the peace. All it did was teach everyone that her marriage came last. So you decided someone else had to come last. I decided my marriage wouldn't. She left before I could answer. Sunday arrived with no plans. At 4:30, I began chopping onions out of habit. By 5, I had a pot of soup large enough for 6 people and 2 plates on the dining table. I stared at them. Then I put 1 plate back. The house made unfamiliar noises when I was listening for Daniel's key. Pipes shifted. The refrigerator clicked off. A branch touched the kitchen window twice. At 5:20, I picked up my phone. I could call and say there had been a misunderstanding. I could tell them the soup was ready. Daniel would arrive with wine. Tessa would bring bread, and everybody would behave carefully until careful became normal. I set the phone down. At 6, I picked it up again and called Lorna. "Dinner?" I asked. "I can't. I'm at a movie with Jean." "Oh, of course." A pause. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Yes." You used the polite yes. "I made too much soup. I can come tomorrow. Tomorrow's fine." After we hung up, I ate alone at the table with the unused chair across from me. At 8:40, the doorbell rang. I froze. It rang again. My phone was in the bedroom, charging. When I opened the door, Daniel stood on the porch with both hands in his jacket pockets. "I called," he said. I didn't hear it. He glanced past me into the hallway, but he did not step inside. "Can I come in?" I stepped back. "Yes." Daniel entered, wiped his shoes on the mat, and closed the door behind him. He looked toward the kitchen. "Something smells good." "Soup." "I didn't come for dinner. I didn't offer." "Right." We stood in the hallway like people waiting to be introduced. His hair was damp from the mist outside. He'd not shaved, and there was a dark half-moon beneath each eye. "Is Tessa with you?" I asked. No. Is everything all right? Why does everyone ask that when they mean, did you have a fight? Did you? He removed his jacket. We had a discussion. About me? Unfortunately. I took his jacket and hung it on the hook beside mine. The motion was so ordinary that both of us watched my hands. You can sit down, I said. He followed me into the kitchen. The soup pot was still on the stove, and my single plate remained on the dining table. Daniel noticed the second placemat with no plate on it. You were expecting someone? No. Then why are there 2 mats? Because there are usually 3. His face shifted. I opened the cabinet. Do you want soup? Yes. He sat while I filled a bowl. I added bread to a small plate, then stopped before buttering it. Daniel liked butter on everything, including foods that already contained butter. I set the plate in front of him as it was. He looked at the plain bread. Do you want butter? I asked. His eyes lifted to mine. He almost smiled. Yes, please. I placed the butter dish between us. He ate several spoonfuls before speaking. This is good. Thank you. Tessa made lentils tonight. You like lentils? I like soup. Lentils can be soup, not hers. I looked at him. That was a joke, he said. It wasn't a kind one. He rubbed his forehead. Can you not defend her while you're mad at her? I can dislike what she did without wanting you to complain about her cooking. That is a very specific moral code. It keeps civilization together. He tore a piece of bread. Tessa thinks you're trying to force me to admit our marriage is wrong. I told her I want you to be married. I know. She told me. That sounds considerate of her. She told me the rest, too. I waited. She said you called me a coward. I said you were calling cowardice neutrality. That's much better. It's more accurate. He pushed his spoon through the soup. I came because I don't understand what you want from me. I want you to be honest. I am honest. You told me you didn't focus on the headings. I didn't focus on all of them. Did you see mine? He kept his eyes on the bowl. There are moments when a person's silence is not an absence. It enters the room, pulls out a chair, and sits down. Yes, he said. The word was almost too quiet to hear. When? Tuesday before the wedding. I folded my hands in my lap. Tessa sent me the final spreadsheet. I saw where everyone was sitting. And the label. Yes. What did you say? I told her it sounded harsh. What did she say? That it was accurate to the categories. And then? We were arguing about Peter and Adrian. Why? Tessa wanted them at our table. I said putting Dad with us and you somewhere else would look deliberate. It was deliberate. I know that now. You knew it then. He shook his head. I thought table 19 would be closer. On the draft, it was near the dance floor. What moved? The band equipment. Shelby rearranged 4 tables. Did she also move me from your family? No. I waited again. Daniel set down his spoon. Tessa said having you and Dad at the same table would make things tense. We had dinner together at your engagement party. She thought you were uncomfortable. She could have asked me, I said that, but you accepted her answer. It was 4 days before the wedding, Mom. We had arguments about flowers, transportation, the ceremony readings, whether Graham's toast could include a story Tessa hated. Every decision was becoming a trial. So you decided not to appeal mine. His jaw tightened. I thought you would know the label didn't change what you are to me. Would you have let her put Peter at table 19? No. His answer came immediately. He heard it too. I leaned back. Why not? Because he's my father. And I'm your mother. That isn't what I meant. Then what did you mean? He got up and carried his bowl to the counter, though it was still half full. Dad would have made a scene. I had expected that answer. It still hurt. And I wouldn't. You did. At the reception entrance, asking why I was labeled past family was a scene. You challenged Tessa in front of guests. Tessa read it in front of guests. He gripped the edge of the counter. This is why I didn't want to come. Then why did you? Because I feel like I'm losing my mother over a seating chart. You're not losing me. You took my key. I asked you to knock. You canceled Sundays. I asked you to make plans with me. You're emptying the room I've slept in for 15 years. You have an apartment and a wife. It still felt like mine. There it was. Not entitlement exactly. Something younger and sadder. I looked toward the hallway. From my chair, I could see the edge of the guest room door. You always had a place here, I said. You still do. But I kept that room as proof you might need me. I do need you. Not like that. How do you know what I need? Because you protected your father from a scene and expected me to survive one. Daniel turned away. I had known Peter's unreliability wounded him. I had not understood how carefully Daniel still organized his life around preventing another disappearance. Peter was welcomed, praised, placed near the center. I was dependable enough to be moved behind a speaker. That's not fair, he said. No, it isn't. He faced me. His eyes were wet, which made his voice sharper. After Dad left, you called me every night. I know. If I didn't answer, you called again. I remember. You asked if I had eaten. You asked when I was coming home. You told me how quiet the house was. Each sentence found its place. I did not defend myself. One Friday, he continued, I was going to a concert with Marcus. You called because the pipe under the sink was leaking. I skipped the concert and drove over. You said you didn't mind. I did mind. Then I saw you sitting on the kitchen floor with towels everywhere, and I felt guilty for minding. I remembered the leak. I remembered Daniel arriving with a wrench, impatient and competent, while I apologized too much. I did not remember the concert. I'm sorry, I said. He looked almost angry at the apology. I didn't come here to make you say that. You should have said it years ago. So you admit it? Yes. I made my loneliness too visible and your adulthood too negotiable. He stared at me. That doesn't excuse the wedding, I said. There it is. Both things can be true. You always get the last line. I'm working on that. He laughed once without humor and sat down again. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The kitchen clock ticked. A car passed outside with music loud enough to rattle the front window. Daniel pulled the bowl toward him and finished the soup. When he stood to leave, I took a glass container from the cabinet. Would you like some to take home? He paused at the word would. Yes, please. I filled the container, closed the lid, and handed it to him. For both of you, I said. Tessa won't eat it. Because it has butter? She can taste butter through walls. Then more for you. At the front door, he put on his jacket. What are you doing with the guest room? He asked. I don't know. You're clearing it without a plan? I thought I might enjoy finding out what I want after the space is empty. He nodded slowly. I can come get the boxes. Call first. I know. He opened the door, then looked back. Mom? Yes? I am sorry I saw the label and let it stay. It was not everything. It was more than he had said before. Thank you. He left. The following Thursday, Lorna brought Jean to my house to help move Daniel's camping equipment out of the closet. I had met Jean twice, but she greeted me like we had survived a natural disaster together. Where is this going? She asked, holding a rolled sleeping bag. The garage until Daniel picks it up. Jean looked toward the garage door. That's how garages become museums of indecision. She's right, Lorna said. You bought a turquoise bowl shaped like regret. Jean likes the bowl. Jean lifted the sleeping bag. I have not been shown the bowl. By the end of the afternoon, we had packed 4 boxes, eaten most of a coffee cake, and removed a narrow bookcase from the guest room. Pale rectangles remained on the wall where Daniel's framed college photographs had hung. The room looked larger and less welcoming. I stood in the doorway after they left, unsure whether I had reclaimed something or damaged it. Daniel collected the boxes on Saturday. He called first. Tessa stayed in the car with Mabel, who watched me through the passenger window. Daniel carried each box to the trunk without coming inside. You could tell her she's welcome, he said after the 3rd trip. She knows. Does she? Did she ask? No. Then don't make us communicate through you. His shoulders dropped. Fine. It isn't fine. It's simply not your job. That's new, yes. He closed the trunk harder than necessary. Weeks settled around us. Daniel called less. When he did, our conversations became careful, then shorter because careful conversation is exhausting. He told me about work, but not Tessa. I asked about Mabel, but not the marriage. We were both trying not to press the bruise, and discovering the bruise covered most of the relationship. I went to a Thursday movie with Lorna and Jean. I accepted an invitation to dinner at Naomi's, though I nearly canceled when Daniel texted asking whether I remembered the name of a restaurant Peter liked. "Ask Peter," I wrote. He replied with a thumbs up. Peter called me 10 minutes later. "What's the name of that Italian place Daniel took me after my knee surgery?" "I don't remember." "Yes, you do. I'm choosing not to. Is this about the wedding?" "It's about you asking your former wife to maintain your relationship with your son. You're being dramatic. I hear that a lot lately." He sighed. "Fine. I'll ask Adrian." "Excellent." Before he hung up, he said, "Daniel tells me you canceled Sundays. We're scheduling our time now. You two always had Sundays. Things change." Peter was quiet. Then he said, "Well, if you don't want him, send him my way." I nearly answered. Instead, I ended the call. 2 days later, Tessa sent a group message about Thanksgiving. She and Daniel were hosting. She listed arrival time, drinks, and the 4 dishes she hoped I would bring: stuffing, sweet potatoes, green beans, and pecan pie. A second message followed with a photograph of her handwritten table plan. Daniel and Tessa sat at the center with Peter and Adrienne on one side, Vivian and Malcolm on the other. My name appeared at the end of a folding table with Graham, Celeste, and 2 neighbors I had never met. I enlarged the photograph until the names became grainy. The folding table was drawn as a narrow rectangle extending from the dining room into the living room. Tessa had marked it Table B, not 19. Progress, apparently. I typed a response, erased it, and called Daniel. He answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, is the Thanksgiving seating final?" A pause followed, just long enough to tell me he had seen the message. "I think so." "You think so?" Tessa did the chart. "Of course she did. Mom, I'm asking whether you and your wife have decided I'm sitting at the folding table while I provide half the meal. It's not half. 4 dishes. There'll be turkey, rolls, cranberry sauce, appetizers. I understand fractions, Daniel." He lowered his voice. "I'm at work. Then call me when you're not. No, wait." I heard a door close on his end, then the muted acoustics of an office stairwell. "It's just where people fit," he said. "The dining table seats 8. You and Tessa, both sets of parents. That's 8. Right. I'm a parent. I know." "So, whose parent is Adrienne?" He exhaled. I disliked myself the moment I said it. Adrienne had done nothing except marry a man who now remembered birthdays because she put them in his calendar. "Leave Adrienne out of it," Daniel said. "You put her in it. It isn't about ranking people. That argument has expired. Tessa grouped people for conversation. You know Graham and Celeste. I met Celeste at breakfast. Graham gave a speech about power couples. You'll like the neighbors. Then invite me to dinner with the neighbors. What do you want us to do?" The question came out with the old desperation. "Fix this for me. Give me an answer Tessa will accept. Make your dignity fit the available chair." "I'll come as a guest," I said. "I'll bring 1 pecan pie. I won't cook 4 dishes and then sit at a folding table. You're making it sound like we're putting you in the garage. I'm telling you what I'm willing to do. You always make the stuffing. I gave you the recipe. Tessa's never made it. She can follow instructions. She plans unscheduled afternoons." He almost laughed. I heard it catch. "Let me talk to her," he said. "All right. Don't message the group yet. I wasn't going to. I'll call you tonight." He did not. Tessa called the following morning. She began with, "Daniel said there's an issue with Thanksgiving. There's a decision." "Okay. I'm happy to attend as a guest and bring a pie. We asked everyone to contribute. What is Peter contributing?" "Wine." "Adrienne?" "Flowers and an appetizer." "Vivian?" "She and Dad are doing the turkey." "Together?" "My father handles the carving. Then Vivian is doing the turkey. That's between them. And this is between us." Her breath sharpened. I don't understand why you have to turn every family event into a test now. I didn't make the seating plan. There are 12 adults and 8 dining chairs. Someone has to sit at the second table. Then why isn't it you? I'm hosting. Exactly. She went quiet. I continued. You understand that where someone sits says something. You proved that at your wedding. So this is still about the card. This is what the card taught me. That we had categories? Nobody is assigning you a position. You sent a diagram. I was trying to avoid confusion. You succeeded. Her voice rose. You're giving us an ultimatum over a chair. No. I'm saying what I will cook and where I'm willing to eat it. If we move you, someone else has to go to table B. Then perhaps you shouldn't have ranked the tables. They're labeled A and B because they can't both be table 1. I closed my eyes. The problem with Tessa was that she could make cruelty sound like office supplies. You don't have to move me, I said. I can stay home. That's manipulative. It's an answer. You know Daniel will be miserable if you don't come. Then Daniel can make a decision. He has. He wants his wife to enjoy the first holiday she's hosting, and he wants his mother's stuffing. That is unbelievably petty. 4 dishes, Tessa. You've made them every year. At my house. For a dinner where I belonged. You belong here. Where? She hung up. Daniel called 12 minutes later. He did not say hello. Why would you tell Tessa she doesn't consider you family? I didn't. That's what she heard. I said I would come with a pie. If we change the table now, she'll feel like you forced her. If you don't, I'll feel like you agreed with her. So I lose either way. This is not happening to you, Daniel. You are participating. Everything with you has become a lesson. Everything with me was convenient until I stopped doing it. He was silent. I could hear voices in the background, then a door closing. Tessa has planned this for weeks, he said. She ordered linens. She borrowed extra dishes. She's trying to make this nice. I believe that. Then why can't you be flexible? I offered to bring pie and attend. You know that's not what she asked. No, she asked for labor and compliance. I offered company. Do you hear yourself? Yes, maybe you should sit this one out if you're going to arrive looking for an insult. The sentence landed so softly I wondered if he understood he had said it. All right, I replied. I didn't mean I'll sit it out. Mom, come on, you made a decision. I'm trying to prevent a fight. You've become very skilled at preventing fights by removing me. That's not fair. No, it isn't. I ended the call before either of us could turn it into something uglier. Peter called that evening. Daniel says you're boycotting Thanksgiving. I'm not boycotting anything. You're refusing to go. I accepted his suggestion that I sit it out. He didn't mean it. Then he'll learn to mean what he says. Peter sighed with his entire body. I could picture him leaning back in a leather chair, looking to Adrian as if she might provide subtitles. This has gotten out of hand, he said. I agree. Then go. Give me your chair. What? Sit at the folding table. I'll take your place. That would be weird. Why? Because I'm his father. I let the silence answer. Peter cleared his throat. That's different. It always is. You two were close for years. Now you're going to destroy that over furniture? I'm not destroying anything. I'm finding out how much of the relationship depended on my willingness to be uncomfortable quietly. He grumbled something about women making symbols out of ordinary objects. Peter, I said, you bought a motorcycle at 48 because a salesman called it freedom. That was completely different. Good night. I had already bought most of the Thanksgiving groceries. The pecans sat in a glass jar on my counter. 2 bags of bread cubes occupied the pantry, along with sweet potatoes, canned stock, and enough green beans to concern a restaurant. I gave some to Lorna and froze the rest. When Lorna learned I was no longer attending Daniel's dinner, she invited me to hers. I declined twice. The third time she said, I'm not rescuing you. I need your stuffing. Make your own. I tried in 2009. We lost 2 teeth. Jean would be there, along with Jean's brother Arthur, who had been divorced long enough to describe it as a dietary restriction. Naomi had nowhere to go after her flight to visit family was canceled. Ellen was invited but politely declined because she had committed to Vivian's dinner and refused to make herself evidence in our dispute. That made me respect her. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke before 6. For one confused second, I thought I had overslept. Normally, by that hour, a turkey would have been on the counter and Daniel would have texted to ask whether he should bring ice. My phone remained dark. I made stuffing for Lorna's dinner. I baked the pecan pie. I cut green beans before remembering nobody had asked for them, then sautéed them anyway with almonds and lemon. At 9:15, Daniel texted, "Happy Thanksgiving, love you." I stared at it until the words blurred. Happy Thanksgiving. I love you too. No anger, no lesson, no invitation. I carried the food to Lorna's apartment at 2. She opened the door wearing a red apron that said, "Kiss the cook or don't, I'm busy." Her turquoise bowl stood proudly on the coffee table. It was, to my annoyance, magnificent. Jean brought mashed potatoes and 2 bottles of wine. Arthur arrived with a store-bought cheesecake he presented as his family recipe. Naomi made cranberry sauce with orange peel and apologized because it was experimental, though cranberry sauce had survived more dangerous ideas. There were 6 of us around Lorna's table. The plates did not match. Jean's elbow bumped mine every time she reached for her glass. Arthur told a story about accidentally joining a couple's cooking class alone and being paired with the instructor's mother. I laughed hard enough to ache. Then Lorna asked whether anyone wanted coffee, and I looked automatically toward the empty space where Daniel should have been. I went to the bathroom and locked the door. For several minutes, I stood with both hands on the sink and let myself grieve. Not for Thanksgiving alone, for the years when Daniel had tasted the stuffing directly from the serving bowl, for the phone call that had not come, for the possibility that my boundary was right and would still cost me more than I knew how to pay. Someone knocked gently. "Occupied," I said. "It's Lorna." "I know your knock." "Do you need anything?" "No." Polite no or real? "No." I wiped my face with toilet paper. Real no. "All right. Arthur is eating your pie before dessert." I opened the door. "He'll lose a hand." By 8, we had finished the wine and taken a group photograph around the turquoise bowl because Lorna insisted it deserved documentation. She posted it online with the caption, "Chosen seating, no chart required." "I wish you hadn't written that," I told her. "I can delete it." I almost said yes. Instead, I shook my head. "Leave it." Daniel called at 10:30. I stepped onto Lorna's balcony to answer. The cold went through my sweater immediately. "Hi," I said, "hi." Behind him I could hear dishes and the low murmur of a television. "I saw the picture," he said. "It was a nice dinner. You looked happy." I was some of the time. He was quiet. "We had too much food," he said. "Tessa made your stuffing. How was it?" "Dry. That can be fixed with stock. She used stock. Then I can't help you." He laughed once, then stopped. "I kept looking at the place where you were supposed to sit," he said. "The folding table?" "Yes." "Did you miss me?" "Of course." "I missed you too." "Then why didn't you come?" I looked through the balcony glass at Lorna arguing with Arthur over the last piece of pie. Because missing you doesn't require me to disappear. Daniel was quiet long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "I never asked you to disappear," he said. "You asked me to accept a place that required it. It was one meal. It was a second table. There were 4 people at that table. Then why didn't you sit there?" The cold had numbed my fingers. I shifted the phone to my other hand. We were hosting. So was I, for years. "That's not the same. You keep saying that whenever the rules reach you." He sighed. "I called because I missed you, and I'm glad you called. It doesn't sound like it. I'm standing on a balcony in November without a coat. Why? Because Lorna's television is loud and Arthur keeps narrating the commercials." Daniel gave a reluctant laugh. Behind me, Arthur pointed at the balcony door and mouthed, "Pie." I held up one finger. "Was Dad all right?" I asked. Dad was Dad. He told the same story twice and fell asleep during dessert. Adrienne? She helped with everything. She even sat at table B for a while. That surprised me. Why? Celeste spilled gravy on her chair. Ah, you thought she was making a statement. I hoped she was. Another silence opened. Tessa cried after everybody left, he said. My first response was concern. My second was suspicion of my concern. Neither felt generous. Why? She worked hard. I know she did. She thought if dinner went well, it would prove we could make our own traditions. To whom? You? I wasn't there. That was the problem. I leaned against the railing. Cold metal pressed through my sweater. This isn't a contest, I said. It feels like one. Then stop keeping score. You posted a photograph captioned, "Chosen Seating." Lorna posted it. You told her to leave it. I closed my eyes. He knew me too well. How do you know that? She said so in the comments. Of course she had. Lorna believed privacy was a condition caused by boring friends. I could have asked her to delete it, I said. I didn't. Why? Because I was tired of protecting everyone from knowing I'd been hurt. That caption hurt Tessa. Yes. Do you care? Yes. He waited, perhaps for an apology. I was not ready to give one merely because the truth had landed somewhere inconvenient. I also care that she made a diagram placing me at the end of a folding table, I said. We're going in circles. Then let's stop for tonight. He sounded relieved and disappointed at once. Okay. Happy Thanksgiving, Daniel. Happy Thanksgiving. When I returned inside, Lorna handed me a glass of wine. You look frozen. I'm fine. Polite fine? Pour more. The following week, Daniel asked me to meet him for coffee. We chose a diner halfway between our houses because neutral ground had become useful. He arrived late and apologized before removing his coat. I was already drinking coffee from a white mug heavy enough to survive a robbery. Daniel ordered apple pie. It's 10 in the morning, I said. I didn't get dessert on Thanksgiving. You had pecan pie. I spent dessert washing roasting pans. Welcome to hosting. He smiled, but the smile faded quickly. I talked to Tessa about the table, he said. I stirred my coffee. What did you say? That we should have put you with us. And? She said changing it after you objected would have rewarded the ultimatum. Rewarded? I know. Did you know before she sent the chart? No, I believed him. His lie about the wedding headings had made him less likely to risk another. She says she keeps feeling like you're testing whether I'll choose you. I don't want you to choose me. That's easy to say. I want you to choose what you believe and accept the cost. At the wedding, you believed the card was wrong and stayed quiet. At Thanksgiving, you wanted me there and told me to stay home. Those were your decisions. He looked toward the counter, where our waitress was filling syrup bottles. What if what I believe hurts someone either way? It probably will. That's your advice? It's adulthood. The waitress set down his pie. Daniel picked up his fork but did not eat. After Dad left, he said, I thought if I made you happy, it proved we were okay. I let you think that. You weren't okay. No. And now every time you're upset, part of me still thinks it's my job. I'm trying to stop giving you that job by taking everything away, by giving you the chance to come because you want me, not because Sunday is on the calendar. He cut the point from the pie. I did want to come Sunday, he said. You came. I felt like I needed permission. You did. He looked up. So do I now, I said. That settled between us. He ate the bite of pie and chewed slowly. We're moving. Where? A townhouse near Ashford Park. 3 bedrooms, a small yard for Mabel. The lease starts in January. I felt a quick, foolish pang that they had made the decision without me. Then I recognized the pang as evidence that our new arrangement was working. That sounds wonderful. You're not upset? Why would I be? It's 40 minutes from you. Your current apartment is 20. I know. Tessa wanted more distance. She wanted a yard. Those things can both be true. He put down the fork. Can you just be happy for us? I am happy for you. You don't sound happy. I'm learning how to be pleased without immediately asking whether you measured the kitchen. That made him laugh. We did. The refrigerator opening is weird. Not my problem. I have pictures. Show me. For the next 15 minutes, he scrolled through photographs, empty rooms, gray carpet, a narrow dining room with a bay window. Tessa standing in the kitchen with her arms spread wide. In one picture, Mabel sat in the fenced yard looking personally responsible for the lease. When we left, Daniel hugged me in the parking lot. It was the first time since the airport that he initiated affection without using it to close an argument. Moving day arrived with freezing rain. Peter had promised to bring his truck and help supervise the movers. At 8:15, Daniel called me. "Dad's not coming." I was standing in my guest room wearing paint-splattered pants. The walls were half covered in a warm green color Jean had chosen after rejecting 9 shades as hospital celery. What happened? He forgot Adrian booked a weekend in Charleston. Did Adrian forget? No. Then Peter forgot he promised you. He says he can come Monday. Movers rarely wait 3 days for moral support. Daniel did not laugh. "We need another car for the fragile stuff. My back seat is full of paint supplies. You could move them." I looked at the wall. Lorna and Jean were due in 20 minutes. We had tickets that evening for a play Jean's brother had been rehearsing for months. "What time do you need me?" "Now." "I can't come now." A pause. "Okay, I can help tomorrow from 2 to 4. We'll be done. Then you won't need me." That's the idea. He sounded so much like Peter that I nearly changed my answer. "I'm sorry he disappointed you," I said. "It doesn't matter. It does matter. It just doesn't automatically become my emergency. I have to go." He ended the call. For the next hour, I painted badly. Green appeared on the baseboard, my elbow, and one section of ceiling nobody admitted reaching. At 10, Marcus sent me a photograph of himself and Daniel carrying a floor lamp through the rain. Marcus's burgundy wedding suit had been replaced by a yellow poncho. "Your son pays in cold pizza," he wrote. I replied, "Demand garlic knots." Daniel had called Marcus after calling me. Marcus arrived with a borrowed van and stayed until the last box was inside. A week later, Daniel mentioned they had watched a game together. Something lost at table 19 had found a door. Peter called 2 days after the move. "You could have told me Daniel was upset. He has your number. He said everything was fine." Daniel says that when he wants somebody to ask twice. "You know him better. I know him differently." Peter cleared his throat. "They're having a housewarming next month. I received the invitation. I'm giving a toast." "Of course you are. I want to say something about Daniel always knowing how to make a home. Did Daniel ask for that theme?" Tessa did. "She wants it personal." "So be personal." I am being personal. I need the story about his first apartment. The table. What table? The one he built? He didn't build a table. Yes, he did. You sent me a picture. He assembled a desk from a box and attached one leg backward. That can work. For a toast about craftsmanship? For a toast about perseverance? I laughed. Peter continued, "Do you still have the picture?" I packed Daniel's photographs and gave them back to him. "Can you ask him?" "You can." "It'll ruin the surprise. You're asking me to provide a memory so you can surprise him by pretending it's yours." I didn't say I was pretending. What were you going to say? That I remember seeing him in that apartment surrounded by boxes, determined to build a life. Were you there? I saw the photo. Then say that. He went quiet. "I'm trying to make up for missing the move," he said. "Then apologize for missing the move." I did. "Did you say you forgot?" I said circumstances got confused. Those are not circumstances. That's you wearing a fake mustache. Peter sighed. "You've gotten difficult. I've gotten unavailable." I liked difficult better. The housewarming invitation described me as a guest and asked me to bring nothing. I read that sentence several times. On the afternoon of the party, I carried a small potted rosemary plant up the townhouse steps. Daniel opened the door before I knocked. He hugged me, took the plant, and called into the house, "Mom's here." The rooms were warm and crowded. Marcus stood near the bay window talking to Naomi. Peter and Adrian were already installed beside the fireplace, where Peter appeared to be practicing his toast on Malcolm. Mabel moved through the guests collecting tribute. Tessa came out of the kitchen. For a second, she looked genuinely glad to see me. Then something clattered behind her. She glanced over her shoulder, reached to a hook by the door, and held out a white apron. "Thank God," she said. "Can you take over the kitchen?" The apron hung between us. It was not an ugly apron. White linen, navy trim, probably purchased to match the kitchen towels. That made it worse. Tessa had prepared my uniform. Before I could answer, Daniel took it from her hand. "Mom's a guest," he said. Tessa looked at him. "I know she's a guest. Then don't put her to work the second she walks in." "I'm not putting her to work." The warming drawer shut off. The potatoes are cold, and Graham put the serving spoon somewhere. Graham is standing 10 feet away. He doesn't know the menu. He knows what a spoon looks like. Two guests near the coat closet became deeply interested in a framed photograph of Mabel. I held up both hands. "I can help for a few minutes." Daniel turned to me. "You don't have to." "I know." Tessa's face tightened. "I didn't say she had to. You handed her an apron before you said hello. I did say hello. You said, 'Thank God.'" "That's practically a prayer," I said. Neither of them laughed. Tessa took the apron from Daniel. "Forget it." She disappeared into the kitchen. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me for an argument you're having with your wife. I wasn't trying to have one. Those seem to be the kind you have best." He gave me a tired look. "Please don't start too." I brought rosemary. I took the plant from him and held it up like evidence of peaceful intent. His expression softened. "For the yard?" "For the kitchen window. Mabel will destroy it in the yard." As if summoned, Mabel pushed between us with a cocktail napkin stuck to one paw. Daniel removed it and scratched behind her ears. "Come on," he said. "I want to show you the house." The townhouse was nicer with furniture. The living room opened into a narrow dining area, then the kitchen. The gray carpet I had seen in the photographs had disappeared beneath a large blue rug. Tessa had hung brass-framed mirrors along one wall to catch the light from the bay window. The third bedroom was an office. The second held an actual guest bed, freshly made with no camping gear in the closet. "You have a guest room," I said. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. "Don't read into it. I'm reading a bed. We have friends. I'm glad." He watched my face, waiting for disappointment. I touched the quilt. "It's a good room. You could stay sometime. I live 40 minutes away. You might drink too much. Then you can drive me home. You've thought of everything." I raised a fixer. When we returned downstairs, Tessa had solved the potato crisis without me. Graham emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray and whispering, "I found the spoons," as if reporting from enemy territory. Daniel led me to the bay window, where two upholstered chairs faced the fireplace. He sat beside me rather than returning to the front door. It was a small decision. Tessa noticed. She passed carrying a bowl of olives and said, "Daniel, people are arriving. People have arrived. You're supposed to be greeting them. So are you. I'm carrying food. I can carry food." She put the bowl on the coffee table. "Fine." Marcus picked up an olive and inspected it. "I'm sensing this isn't about olives." "It's never about olives," Naomi said. They changed the subject before anyone could respond. I loved them for that. For the next hour, the party found its rhythm. The food warmed. Drinks appeared. Mabel stationed herself beneath Peter's chair because Peter dropped things with great reliability. Adrian joined me near the fireplace. "I like your rosemary," she said. "It's less aggressive than a houseplant. I gave them an orchid. That's a threat." "I know." It was all the florist had. She glanced toward Peter, who was holding a folded sheet of paper and practicing under his breath. "He's nervous about the toast. He could decide not to give one. You know Peter." "I used to." "He thinks if he says the perfect thing, Daniel will forget the move. Does Peter know the perfect thing is, 'I'm sorry, I forgot'?" "I've mentioned it. More than once. Until he accused me of creating a hostile home environment. I liked her again." Peter tapped a fork against his glass a few minutes later. The room quieted in stages. I promised to be brief. he began, guaranteeing the opposite. Daniel stood with Tessa near the dining table. She had one hand tucked into his arm. From where I sat, they looked united. Peter spoke about houses being more than walls, marriage being more than vows, and dogs being harder on security deposits than people realized. That got a laugh. Then he moved into the personal section. When Daniel was 23, he said, "I visited his first apartment and found him surrounded by lumber, determined to build his own dining table." Daniel looked at me. Peter continued, "The pieces didn't fit. The instructions made no sense, but my son kept working until he had something sturdy enough to gather people around. It was a desk," Daniel said. A few guests laughed, assuming the correction was part of the story. Peter smiled tightly. "A multi-purpose desk. It had 3 legs, which proves my larger point about perseverance." More laughter. Peter raised his glass. "To Daniel and Tessa. May this home always be sturdy enough to gather the people you love." We drank. It was not a terrible toast. That was Peter's particular talent. He could arrive with the wrong memory and leave carrying the emotion. Daniel came to me afterward. "Did you give him that story?" "No. He told me you wouldn't send the picture. Were you upset?" I was curious why he remembered it. He remembered a photograph. Of course. He looked across the room. Peter was accepting compliments on the toast. "I asked him to help me build that desk," Daniel said. "He told me he was too busy." I remembered. "You called me," I said. "You came over with a screwdriver and dinner. You attached the leg backward. You kept interrupting. You were building furniture on the carpet." He smiled, but his eyes remained on Peter. "Marcus came too," I added. "He's the one who fixed it." Daniel turned toward Marcus, who was demonstrating something to Naomi with both hands. I didn't remember that. Memory has poor seating arrangements. He looked at me. "Was that deliberate?" "A little." Tessa called his name from the kitchen. He sighed. "Go," I said. The party began thinning around 6. Malcolm and Vivian left first. Vivian kissed Tessa, handed her 3 empty containers, and warned her that the orchid needed less water than she thought. Peter and Adrian followed. At the door, Peter hugged Daniel for a long time and said, "Proud of you, son." Daniel hugged him back. After Peter released him, Adrian took Daniel's face between her hands and said something I could not hear. Daniel nodded. I collected my coat. Tessa was stacking glasses on the kitchen counter. The counters looked as though a small banquet had surrendered there. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for inviting me. And for the rosemary. You're welcome." Her eyes went to the white apron now folded beside the sink. Daniel came in carrying empty bottles. "Mom, you don't have to go yet. I think you two need to collapse in private. We could have coffee." Tessa placed another glass on the counter, harder than necessary. Daniel looked at her. "What?" "Nothing." "No, what?" "We have 30 glasses to wash. I'll wash them." "You said you wanted coffee." "I can do both, with your mother." I picked up my purse. "I'm leaving." Tessa turned. "Of course you are." The words stopped me. "What does that mean?" Daniel asked. "It means she gets to leave after you spent the whole afternoon proving she was a guest." "She was a guest. She's your mother." "Yes." "So when I ask for 10 minutes of help, you embarrass me. I told you before the party not to ask her to work. You told me not to expect her to help. I didn't expect it. I asked. You handed her an apron. I was overwhelmed, and she had been inside for 12 seconds. Tessa looked at me. Would you have helped if I'd said it differently? The honest answer irritated me. Probably. See? That isn't the point. What is the point, Marion? That I didn't perform the request properly? The point is that you invited me as a guest because the word became necessary, then greeted me as staff because the habit was convenient. I needed help. Then asked Daniel. It's his house. I did ask Daniel. He was sitting beside you. Daniel set the bottles down. You're angry that I sat with my mother? I'm angry that every interaction has become a demonstration. I took away an apron. in front of people. 2 people who pretended to like our Mabel picture. Tessa's eyes filled. You made me look cruel. I opened my mouth, but Daniel spoke first. You read her card aloud in front of people. The kitchen went silent. Tessa wiped beneath one eye with the heel of her hand. We're back to that. We never left it. I apologized. You said you were sorry she was hurt. That is an apology. No, it's a description. I had never heard him use one of my lines against her. It did not feel as satisfying as I might have imagined. Tessa turned to me. Are you enjoying this? No, you got what you wanted. He's finally confronting me. I wanted him to confront himself. That sounds noble. It isn't. I wanted my son to care that I was humiliated. He cares. Now. Daniel moved between us, not physically, but with his voice. Why did you call it past family? Tessa stared at him. You know why. I know the explanation you gave me. I want the actual reason. They were categories. Mom's card could have said groom's mother. I wanted the lines clear. For whom? For her. The answer arrived flat and exhausted. Daniel's face changed. Tessa kept speaking, perhaps because stopping would have required hearing herself. Every private conversation with Marion becomes a negotiation. If I'd quietly said she wasn't at our table, she would have asked questions. Then you would have tried to make everyone happy, and nothing would be settled. I wanted it clear enough that she couldn't pretend she misunderstood. So you wanted her to see it. Yes, and you read it aloud on purpose. She said it was a mistake. You wanted other people to hear. I wanted the discussion to end. I leaned against the door frame. Daniel looked as though someone had moved the floor beneath him. You told me it was just an organizational heading. It was both. You said nobody would take it personally. I knew she would. The admission sat among the dirty glasses. I thought of the pearls on her wedding sleeve, the chicken salad at my counter, her face when she said she feared having to earn a place I already occupied. All of that remained true. So did this. Daniel said, You used my wedding to put my mother in her place. Our wedding. That's your answer? My answer is that I was trying to protect our marriage. From my mother? From you refusing to establish boundaries with her? So you humiliated her until I had to prove I was on your side. Tessa crossed her arms over herself. You were supposed to be on my side. I was. That's what you counted on. I moved toward the hall. Daniel looked at me. Wait. No. Mom, please. This is your marriage. Talk to your wife. Tessa gave a broken laugh. Now she respects the boundary. I put on my coat. Daniel followed me to the door. I'm sorry. Don't apologize while looking at her. He stopped. I love you, I said. Both of you need to decide what love is allowed to require. I stepped outside. The door closed before I reached my car. Through the front window, I saw their shapes in the kitchen, facing each other across the white apron. I drove home with the radio on and heard none of it. At one red light, I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. I opened my hands, flexed them, and saw a smear of green paint near one thumbnail. The guest room still needed a second coat. That fact steadied me. There were walls in my life that did not care who sat at which table. At home, I hung my coat and placed the Rosemary's empty wrapping paper in the recycling. The bottle of port from Daniel's honeymoon remained unopened on the counter. I moved it to the cabinet because seeing it had begun to feel like an assignment. My phone buzzed at 10:16. Daniel, are you home? I typed yes. The dots appeared for a long time. He sent nothing else. At 11:40, headlights moved across my living room wall. A car door closed. The doorbell rang. Daniel stood on the porch with a suitcase. He looked past me before I had invited him in, toward the hallway where his old room waited behind a green door. Can I stay here? He asked. The question reached every reflex I had spent months trying to retrain. I wanted to take the suitcase. I wanted to warm soup, turn down the bed, and tell him whatever happened could be solved in the morning. I wanted to prove that no card, no marriage, no boundary could change where he belonged. Then I noticed his wedding ring. He was twisting it around his finger. "You can come in," I said. "But you can't move in." His face hardened. "I asked for tonight. You brought enough clothes for more than tonight. I didn't know what to pack. Come inside." He rolled the suitcase over the threshold. I closed the door and led him to the kitchen. He stood beside the table instead of sitting. "You have a room," he said. "I have a room. It used to be mine. It used to be available whenever you needed to escape. That's not fair. It may not be. Sit down." "I don't want to sit down." "Then stand." He stared at me. He looked angry, exhausted, and younger than a 35-year-old man should look while carrying luggage out of his marriage. "What happened after I left?" I asked. "You know what happened. I know what was happening when I left. Tessa said you'd been waiting for that confession. I had not. She thinks you pushed until she finally said something you could use. I was putting on my coat. You stayed. Because she asked whether I would have helped. Then she told the truth. She said you cornered her. Did you think she was cornered?" He looked away. "That is between you and your wife," I said. "I'm not going to build your version for you. I'm not asking you to. You came here with a suitcase because I had nowhere else to go. You have friends. I don't want to tell Marcus my marriage fell apart over a seating card. Then tell him it fell apart because neither of you knew how to disagree without making another person the test." His eyes flashed. "You really have been saving that line." "No. It arrived while you were speaking." He pulled out a chair and sat. I filled the kettle. It was almost midnight, but there are moments when coffee is less dangerous than sleep. Daniel watched me spoon grounds into the machine. "She admitted it," he said. "I heard." "No." "After you left, she admitted more." I stopped. He turned his ring again. "She said the card wasn't only for you. It was for me." "What does that mean?" "She wanted to see whether I would back her up. She said if I moved you after she'd made the category clear, she would know I still couldn't put our marriage first." I pressed the button. The coffee maker coughed, then began dripping. "What did you say?" I said marriage shouldn't require me to humiliate somebody. That was true at the reception, too. I know. He looked up, angry again. "Can you let me get through one thing without reminding me I failed earlier?" "No." "Why?" "Because you keep describing Tessa's choice as if it happened alone. You saw the card. I already apologized." And I accepted the apology. Acceptance doesn't erase the fact. He leaned back and covered his face with both hands. "I don't know what you want. Right now, I want you to stop asking me what to do about your marriage. I'm asking if I can sleep in your guest room." The two questions are attached to the same suitcase. The coffee finished. I poured 2 cups and carried them to the table. Daniel took his without thanking me, which almost comforted me. At least we were beyond ceremony. "We yelled," he said. "Tessa said I had spent months letting you punish her. I said she had spent months punishing you because she was afraid of losing some competition you weren't even having. I was having part of it." He frowned. "I kept track," I said. "Who called? Who needed me? Whether you preferred my food, whether you asked my opinion first." Tessa felt it. So the card was justified? No. Pain can explain cruelty. It cannot convert it into good judgment. He looked down at the coffee. "She told me to go to my mother," he said, "and you did. I didn't know where else to go." "Marcus?" "I haven't known him in years. You called him on moving day. He helped with boxes. That doesn't mean I can show up at midnight. You were willing to show up here. You're my mother. And that means I have to take whichever role the two of you assign me. Intruder when she feels crowded, shelter when you fight. I didn't assign you anything. Past family, emergency housing. Those are assignments." He pushed his chair back. "This was a mistake." "No." Coming here was understandable. Staying would be a mistake. He stood and reached for the suitcase. I went around the table and hugged him. At first, his arms remained at his sides. Then he held on so tightly the edge of his ring pressed into my back. I'm not turning you away, I said into his shoulder. I'm refusing to help you avoid the next decision. It feels the same. I know. He pulled back. His eyes were wet. Where am I supposed to sleep? I'll sit with you while you call a hotel. Or Marcus. At midnight? He likes you enough to carry your lamps in freezing rain. That doesn't mean he wants my marriage in his living room. Ask. Daniel looked toward the green door. You painted it. The color is called Garden Path. It looks like pea soup. Jean chose it. You let Jean choose paint? I'm changing. He almost smiled. Then he called Marcus. He kept the phone on speaker because his hands were shaking. Marcus answered after 5 rings with a rough, suspicious, "Hello?" "Hey," Daniel said. "Sorry. Did I wake you?" "No, I always sound dead. I need a place to stay tonight." Marcus was silent for 1 second. "Come over. I might need more than 1 night. Then bring pants." Daniel looked at me. "Thank you," he said. "Do you still hate mushrooms?" "Yes." "Good. I have pizza." The call ended. Daniel zipped his jacket. "Mom? Yes? Do you feel vindicated?" "No. You were right about her. I was right about the card." "What's the difference?" "Tessa is more than the worst thing she did to me." "So are you." He swallowed. "So am I," I added. He lifted the suitcase handle. At the door, I touched his cheek. "Text me when you get there." "Is that allowed under the new rules?" "Yes." He nodded and left. At 12:37, the message came. Here. Marcus gave me mushroom pizza. I replied, "Eat around them." For 4 days, I heard nothing from Tessa. Daniel went to work from Marcus's house and returned to the townhouse twice for clothes. He told me this in brief phone calls that sounded like reports filed from a neutral country. I did not ask whether he slept. I knew he did not. On the 5th morning, Tessa called. "Did he stay with you?" she asked. "No." A pause. "Why not? Because I didn't want to become a way for him to avoid you. You turned him away?" "I helped him call Marcus. You always said he had a home with you. He has a relationship with me. That is not the same as unlimited use of my house." She breathed out slowly. "Did he tell you what I said?" "Some of it." "Of course. I'm not going to discuss his private conversation with me. I'm his wife. Then speak to him. He won't come home. That is between you and Daniel." Her voice cracked. "Hey, you really can do that now, can't you?" "Do what? Close the door and say it isn't your problem." I sat at the kitchen table. "It is my problem emotionally," I said. "I love both of you. It is not my decision." "You don't love me." "I don't know how I feel about you today." She gave a short, wounded laugh. "At least that's honest?" "Yes." She ended the call without saying goodbye. Peter telephoned an hour later. "What the hell is going on?" "I assume Daniel called you." "No." Adrian spoke to Tessa. "Then speak to Adrian. Daniel's staying with that college friend. Marcus. I know his name. You called him Malcolm at the wedding. That was one time. What do you want, Peter?" "I want you to talk sense into Daniel. No, he's throwing away a marriage over a stupid card. Daniel is deciding whether his marriage can survive what the card revealed. You're enjoying this. You and Tessa should start a club." "Marion." "I have to go." "To what?" The question exposed how thoroughly everyone had assumed my schedule was public property, something that is not yours. I hung up. I did have somewhere to go. Lorna, Jean, and I were finishing the guest room. Jean had found yellow curtains at an estate sale. They did not match the green paint, which was why she loved them. We hung the curtains and moved in a narrow desk I had bought second-hand. I did not know what I would do at the desk. The uncertainty felt luxurious. Daniel came by the next weekend. He called first. We sat in the finished room. The bed remained, but it had become a daybed beneath the window, covered with cushions Lorna said were cheerful and I said were loud. Daniel touched one yellow curtain. "This room looks like mustard met a lawn. You're not invited to decorate." Clearly. He sat on the edge of the daybed. "Tessa and I saw a counselor. I took the desk chair. How was it? Awful. Then possibly useful. She said we make other people carry our disagreements. The counselor, Tessa. That surprised me. She said she made you carry her fear that I'd never choose our marriage. I made you carry my fear that Tessa would leave if I disagreed with her. What did you say? That you spent years carrying my fear Dad would disappear again. The room became quieter. He still does, Daniel said, just in smaller, more respectable ways, missing moving day, giving a toast instead of helping. Yes. I kept thinking if I made him feel important enough, he'd stay, and you knew I would. He looked at me. I'm sorry. You apologized for the card. No, I apologized that I let it stay. I didn't apologize for why. I waited. I chose you because you were safer to hurt, he said. I knew you'd sit down. I knew you'd still host breakfast. I knew you'd bring my passport and take care of Mabel. I used how much you loved me as proof I could get away with it. Tears rose before I could prevent them. Daniel's did too. I did the same thing, I said. After the divorce, I used how much you loved me to make sure I was never alone. He shook his head. That's not the same. It doesn't have to be the same for me to own it. He stood and crossed the room. I held him beside the ridiculous yellow curtains. After a while, he said, I want to try to save my marriage. I know. Are you disappointed? No. Tessa thinks you will be. Tessa can ask me. He stepped back. She wants to. That afternoon, after Daniel left, my phone rang. Tessa's name appeared on the screen. I answered. Can I come over? She asked. Yes, when? Now is fine. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Tessa stood on the porch alone, holding nothing. She looked past me toward the hallway, then kept her feet exactly where they were. Can I come in? Yes. I stepped aside. Tessa entered, wiped her shoes on the mat, and waited while I closed the door. She wore jeans and a gray sweater. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot, and there was no ring of keys in her hand, no folder, no list. Would you like coffee? I asked. Yes, thank you. She followed me into the kitchen but did not take her usual place at the counter. She sat at the table. I made coffee. While it brewed, neither of us attempted conversation. Tessa looked toward the hallway and noticed the open door to the guest room. You finished painting. I had help. Daniel said it was green. It is aggressively green. She almost smiled. Can I see it? After coffee. I set a mug in front of her. She wrapped both hands around it but did not drink. Daniel told me what he said to you, she began. Which part? The part about choosing you because you were safe to hurt. I sat across from her. He didn't tell me you asked him to say that, she added. I didn't. I know. The coffee steamed between us. Tessa took one sip and placed the mug down carefully. I owe you an apology. Yes. She blinked. People expected you to make apologies easier by denying they were necessary. I was through volunteering for that position. I'm sorry I wrote past family on your card, she said. I'm sorry I put you at that table, and I'm sorry I read it aloud. Why did you read it aloud? Her fingers tightened around the mug. Because you said it was a mistake. It should have been. I wanted you to know it wasn't. You wanted everyone nearby to know, yes. The word cost her something. I let it. I thought if it happened privately, you would talk Daniel into changing it, she said. Or he would see your face, feel guilty, and change it without admitting why. Would that have been terrible? To me, then? Yes. Why? Because I needed to know he would stand with me while I stood alone. Her eyes lowered. Yes. Outside, a truck moved slowly down the street. Its brakes squealed at the corner, then released. Tessa said, I told myself the category was honest. You and Peter were divorced. Adrian was his wife. Daniel and I were creating a new family. All of that sounded reasonable if I said it in the right order. You're good at order. I know. The word mother should have survived the divorce. I know that now. You knew it then. She looked at me. Yes, she said. I knew. That answer hurt more and healed more than another explanation would have. I was angry with you before the wedding, she continued. Not about one thing, about 100 small things. The spice drawer. The spice drawer was criminal. The cumin did not belong beside baking soda. It belonged where I put it. I nodded. Continue. You answered questions Daniel asked me. He called you after we chose the townhouse because he wanted to know whether the kitchen was too narrow. He showed me after he told me. He called you from the parking lot before we signed. I had not known that. Tessa saw it on my face. He didn't tell you? No. He told me you already knew. I thought of Daniel showing me photographs in the diner, waiting to see whether I was upset about the distance. Even while trying to separate us, he had been stitching the edges together. He was managing both of us, I said. We trained him well. The sentence was bitter, but not aimed in only one direction. Tessa leaned back. Every Sunday, I felt like I was visiting a marriage that had no romance in it. I flinched. I don't mean anything inappropriate, she said quickly. I mean you and Daniel had routines, private jokes, decisions already made. If I wanted something different, he looked at you before answering. If you looked disappointed, he changed his mind. Sometimes. Often. I believe you. Her expression shifted. She had prepared herself to argue evidence. Agreement left her without armor. I started seeing everything as proof, she said. The key to your house, his room, Mabel's medication at your place, the way he called you when Peter upset him. I thought if I didn't draw a line, I would spend my whole marriage asking permission to exist inside it. So you drew the line through me. Yes, your mother's marriage. Tessa nodded. My mother made room for everyone, she said. Old friends who insulted Dad, relatives who arrived without calling. My father's former fiancé who came to holidays for years because Vivian didn't want anyone to think she was insecure. Mom called it generosity. Dad called it being civilized. Then they fought in private about every person they had welcomed in public. Are they happy? I don't know. They're loyal. That wasn't my question. It's the one they answer. I looked at my coffee. Tessa continued, I promised myself I would never become a guest in my own marriage, and I became the easiest person to remove. You weren't easy. Safe then. Her eyes filled. Yes. I let the silence remain. Forgiveness offered too quickly can become another way of saving someone from the weight of what they did. I am sorry, she said. Not that you were hurt. I'm sorry I hurt you. Deliberately. Thank you. Can you forgive me? Not today. She nodded once. I want to, I said. That is what I can honestly offer. Tessa wiped one cheek. That's more than I expected. I owe you an apology, too. Her head lifted. I made my house the center of Daniel's life after Peter left. I kept that room ready. I kept dinner ready. I made my loneliness visible enough that he learned to monitor it. You were alone. That explains it. She heard her own lesson returned without malice. I also treated you like an addition to a family Daniel and I had already finished building, I said. I liked you. I helped you. I welcomed you, but I did not always make space for you to change anything. The spice drawer. The spice drawer remains indefensible. She laughed through her tears. I am sorry, I said. You should not have had to compete with me to make adult decisions with your husband. Thank you. My apology does not make the card reasonable. I know, and your apology does not restore Sundays. I know that too. We drank our coffee. After a while, Tessa asked, Do you think our marriage can survive this? That is not my decision. I'm asking what you think. You're asking the wrong person. Ask Daniel what he requires. Tell him what you require. Then decide whether those things can live in the same house. You sound like the counselor. I'm cheaper. She said we use other people to regulate our marriage. She used the word regulate? Yes. I would have said manage. She charges by the hour. More syllables. I smiled. Do you want him to come home? I asked. Yes. Do you want him to come home because he chooses you or because he has nowhere else to stay? Tessa looked toward the hallway. That was why you wouldn't let him stay. Yes, I thought you'd won. I was awake at 1 a.m, wondering whether refusing my son a bed made me principled or monstrous. What did you decide? That it could be both. She nodded slowly. I told him to go to you, she said. I wanted him to prove me right. He came. I know. And I sent him to Marcus. I know that too. Something in her shoulders released. May I see the room now? She asked. I showed her. Tessa stood in the doorway and stared at the yellow curtains against the green walls. Oh, she said. That is the correct response. It's very... Don't strain yourself. She walked to the desk and touched the back of the second-hand chair. What are you going to do in here? I don't know. You could write. Write what? Your recipes. So I stopped ruining your stuffing. You did not ruin it. You dried it. Daniel told you? He called from Thanksgiving. Of course he did. He also told me you worked hard. She looked out the window. I hated that day, she said. Not because the food went wrong. Because every time I looked at the empty seat, I knew why it was empty. Which seat? The one beside Daniel. I said nothing. Tessa turned. The chart wasn't the final arrangement? What changed? Adrienne asked me why you weren't at our table. I told her there wasn't room. She said she would sit with Graham and Celeste. Adrienne told me she offered that at the wedding, too. I know. Daniel told me to switch the cards. I refused because you had already given the ultimatum. A guest requesting dignity is not an ultimatum. I know that now. She stood beside the daybed. We would like to invite you to dinner, she said. When? Not yet. When Daniel comes home. If he comes home. Ask me then. You might say no. Yes. Tessa accepted that. At the front door, she put on her coat and touched the knob. I don't expect things to go back, she said. They shouldn't. I did love being here on Sundays. I loved having you. She looked at me, uncertain whether that was past tense. Drive safely, I said. She left. Daniel stayed with Marcus for another 2 weeks. He and Tessa met with the counselor twice. They met alone in public places 3 times because the townhouse carried too many expectations and Marcus's living room carried too many pizza boxes. On the 3rd meeting, Daniel returned home with 1 suitcase and an agreement that leaving again would not be used as a threat. They did not give me the details. That was one of the agreements. Daniel called Peter and told him missing the move had hurt him. Peter began with circumstances, traffic, and Adrienne's calendar. Daniel stopped him. I didn't ask why, he later told me. I told him what it cost. What did he say? He said he was sorry. Did he mean it? I think he wants to. Peter did not transform. He forgot a lunch in February and remembered it before dinner. Progress arrived in unimpressive clothing. My relationship with Daniel changed just as unevenly. Some weeks he called twice. Some weeks he did not call at all. The first silent week hurt so much I checked my phone for technical problems. Then I went to a movie with Lorna and Jean and discovered 2 missed calls when I came out. I called him the next morning. Not immediately. The next morning. The cream seating card remained in the honeymoon folder for months. I took it out once, considered tearing it, and put it back. Destroying the object would not revise the evening. Keeping it would not protect me from another one. Eventually, I dropped it into the kitchen trash beneath coffee grounds and onion skins. No ceremony, no witnesses. In March, Daniel called on a Tuesday. Tessa and I would like to have you for dinner Sunday, he said. This Sunday? Yes. What time? 5:30. I checked my calendar. Lorna and I had tickets Saturday, not Sunday. I can come. Great. A pause followed. Mom? Yes? Thank you. For checking my calendar? For saying yes. When I arrived, Daniel answered the door. He hugged me and took my coat. Tessa came from the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel. No apron waited on a hook. I'm making roast chicken, she said. I may have used too much rosemary. Impossible. Would you taste the gravy? The question was offered without urgency. I'd be happy to. The gravy needed salt. I told her. She added some, tasted it again, and decided it needed pepper too. I disagreed. She used pepper. Dinner was set at the small dining table near the bay window. 3 plates, 3 glasses, 3 handwritten place cards. Mine said, "Only Marion." No category, no explanation. Daniel had placed it beside his chair. Tessa sat across from us, close enough to touch his hand without reaching around anyone. Mabel settled beneath the table and put her head on my foot. The chicken was good. The gravy had too much pepper. Nobody mentioned it. After dinner, Daniel gathered the plates. "We were thinking we could do this again next month," he said. "If you'd like." He did not say the first Sunday. He did not assume my house or my cooking. He did not fill the silence while I considered. I looked at Tessa. She waited too. "The 3rd Sunday won't work," I said. "Jean's brother is in another play, and apparently we're all obligated to encourage him." Daniel smiled. "2nd Sunday?" I checked the calendar on my phone. "The 2nd Sunday is free. 5:30? Ask me when it gets closer." His smile widened. "Okay." I picked up the place card and turned it over. The back was blank. Then I set it in front of me and stayed for coffee.